All right, so welcome and thanks, Sheriff Walcher, Mr. Brown, Mr. Mulder. Thanks for showing up, members. Thanks for being here. This is the first time Lodge 31 has sponsored a candidate forum for the office of Arapahoe County Sheriff that, to my knowledge. The members spoke, they wanted to know more about the candidates, and that's why we're here. Arapahoe FOP Lodge 31 has increased drastically in number since 2008. In 2008, we're a lodge of 260 members. Now in 2018, we're over 420. We're the second largest FOP lodge in the state now, and continuing to grow. Some of the ground rules, just for the first hour, it's going to be pretty much a round table between the three. All candidates will be allowed to ask questions to each other on any topic they choose. Sheriff Walcher will have the floor first, followed by Mr. Brown and then Mr. Mulder. The candidates will be able to ask one question each and continue in that order until the 60-minute time frame is complete. The audience members shall not ask questions or interrupt the candidates during this portion of the session. For the next 2 hours after that, I'll go over the rules coming up for that. So, Sheriff Walcher, the floor is yours.
Jason, when I ask a question, can I do it to both candidates or to one?
Absolutely.
Okay,
either one.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for being here today. I'll get started. So, for Tyler, what are the three biggest issues facing the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office?
Well, again, FOP members, thank you for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to address you guys, and thank you, Sheriff, for being here, and Eric, thank you. The three biggest issues facing the Sheriff's Office right now, I believe, number one is staffing. I think that's an issue that is being faced by law enforcement agencies across the country. So, is that good enough volume? Okay. So, that's the first one. I think the second one right now is the jail. We have an aging jail, and that's going to have to be addressed over the next few years. And the third issue, I think right now is just an overall morale with law enforcement. I think that the job that we do on a daily basis is a tough one. And I think that the more that you're supported inside of your office or inside of your department, the easier it is to go out and do that job. So, as sheriff, I would take that opportunity to go out into the community and rebuild some bridges that have some perceived misconceptions of what we do on a daily basis. So that would be my job. But I think those are the three biggest things facing the sheriff's office right now. So, thank you.
Eric?
Same question, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
All right, can everyone hear me all right? So the three issues that I would say the sheriff's office is facing is one, spending has gone up substantially. Since 2015, the budget has increased by over $10 million. That money has to come from somewhere, and that money comes from me, you, and everyone in this county. So we need to make sure that when we're spending money, we're spending it appropriately. I've also been told by a variety of other people, as well as what Tyler Brown touched upon, that the jail is a concern. Some people are saying it needs to either be substantially upgraded, and some people are saying it needs to be replaced in its entirety. Which brings me to the third issue, and that is jail population. Sheriff Walcher has said that there are people in the jail who frankly don't belong there because they're dealing with issues such as mental illness. And I believe that if we work with the county commissioners and work with other resources, we can find appropriate solutions to incarceration. That's going to reduce our overhead expenses, and we could pass those savings right on to the rest of the department, or we could pass it on back to the county.
This question is for Sheriff Walcher. Arapahoe County deputies are among the top five paid law enforcement officers in the metro area. With this understanding, why is staffing such an issue, and what has been done to avoid costly overturn and increase the quality applicants to address actual staffing?
The vacancy rate right now for deputy sheriffs is 1.3%. And the reality is that our retention, and frankly, it's pretty good. Generally, when people retire, they either retire or they leave under bad circumstances. It is rare that individuals leave to go to other agencies. The biggest challenge with that is our non-certified deputy sheriffs who would like to get post-certified, and I understand that, and a lot of times they're pursuing greener pastures out there because they want to become post-certified deputy sheriffs and do police work in the field. So it's kind of a multi-faceted question, but our turnover rate, really, with the exception of the non-certified deputy sheriffs, is not that bad. I will say, as far as, and part of this was about retention and keeping employees, we have implemented a lot of new measures when it comes to our hiring and recruiting efforts. And I can go over about 13 of those, and I don't know how much time we have, but I could go over to 13 different items about what we are doing internally to ensure that we hire people as fast as we can, recruit people as fast as we can, while never relaxing our standards. But obviously, as in everywhere we're at, hiring is difficult, and it's not just for us, but it's everywhere. But we've made a lot of internal strides in HR and throughout the organization to speed up the time in which people get hired and other efforts to retain them. And in a closing statement, I'm going to talk about some of the efforts going on that I'm involved in right now, and I'll cover some of that in a closing statement.
All right, we'll go ahead with my question. My question is for Tyler Brown. Tyler, the department you work for, Mountain View Police Department, is notorious in the state of Colorado for being what's known as a quote-unquote speed trap. Mountain View issues more tickets than Denver, Aurora, and Boulder combined. Last year, Mountain View made over 53% of its budget, 2014, over 53% of its budget came from tickets and fines. My question is, with this approach to policing, why does that belong in the Sheriff's Department here?
Well, some of those facts, 2014 was a very high ticket number year. The fact that the statement that we write more tickets than Denver and Aurora combined is a false statement. I know that a specific motor officer in Denver can write anywhere from 2,500 tickets to 4,000 tickets a year. So in 2014, I think the last time I pulled the numbers, we wrote approximately 1,300 tickets. I wasn't there at that point, but over the last few years, our ticket numbers have dropped off immensely. So we've revamped how we're conducting our traffic enforcement on a daily basis, and we're going more for life safety issues and not revenue generation. I think that was brought to the attention of some people, and there was some hard chargers there early on that they enjoyed writing tickets. That's what they did. They would go out and write 6 or 7 a day, and that was their job function. Since then, we've really tried to address more of a community policing aspect of it, and that's what I would like to bring to the Sheriff's Office to continue the community policing efforts.
So this is for both of you again, because I think it's important that people hear from both candidates about this. We just signed a new 10-year contract with the City of Centennial that was effective January 1 of 2018. The city wanted a termination provision in that contract which would allow them to terminate the contract if there is a change in the sheriff, and the city wanted that in there. If that would occur, what are the impacts to the Sheriff's Office in Arapahoe County?
If termination took place?
Yes, termination of the contract.
If they did terminate the contract, which I would do everything in my power if elected sheriff to make sure that we continue to provide the City of Centennial the same professional law enforcement that you guys are providing them today. The contract is a $25 million contract that provides funding for approximately 170 deputies here in the county. The impact would be enormous if that contract were to be terminated by the city. And I would do everything in my power to work with them to make sure that the vision of the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office and us providing law enforcement for them continued to be the same. And we continued to provide them the utmost professional law enforcement service that we possibly could. So the impact is the 170 deputies that would devastate the Sheriff's Office. The $25 million that would also devastate the Sheriff's Office. So with that being said, am I allowed to ask a follow-up question in the middle of this?
Sure. Well, it's not.
Okay. With that being said, was it fought to have that removed from the contract due to the fact that the City of Centennial works with the Sheriff's Office and understands that the Sheriff's Office follows the ebb and flow of the election cycle?
They specifically wanted that in the contract, and I didn't fight with that's a provision that they wanted in that contract.
Okay. And I guess I would fight to have that provision removed if I was able to renegotiate that contract. I don't think that the public safety should be put in jeopardy due to an election cycle. The deputies on the street are providing a professional service to those citizens. And I would fight tooth and nail not to allow the city to play politics with citizens' safeties or deputies' jobs.
It's like what Tyler Brown touched upon. I would consider that extremely premature to cease contracting with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office just because I got elected. The city of Centennial doesn't even know who I am. They don't even know if I'd like to continue their policy or even see what their intentions are for the deputies are. So I believe to terminate the contract to provide patrol services for the city of Centennial just because we got a new sheriff, I believe is presumptuous and premature. And if I did get elected, I would tell the city of Centennial, before you cancel using the sheriff's department, I'd like to ask, why do you want to stop using the sheriff's department just because I'm not Sheriff Walcher? What am I doing that I haven't even done yet that is prompting you to say we're canceling this agreement? And I also find that that's a little troubling that the city of Centennial would be willing to leave their entire city without police services just because a new sheriff got elected. That's over 100,000 people who suddenly don't have patrol services. So if they tried to bring that up, I would state, well, if the contract says you have every right to terminate the agreement, then by all means do so. But you have to explain to your constituents why they suddenly don't have patrol services anymore. And if you want those patrol services back, I will be happy to negotiate a new contract with you.
Mr. Mulder, several times you've focused on stating that you would demilitarize the sheriff's office in their job function. How do you plan on doing that, and what pieces of equipment are you envisioning taking away from deputies?
In terms of demilitarization, it's not about taking equipment away, it's about making sure we have the appropriate equipment for the job. Take, for example, the MRAP vehicle. It's often touted as a free gift from the 1033 program. My experience in the military tells me that that vehicle is a liability. It leads to more rollovers than any other military vehicle that has existed. It's a huge gas hog, and the mileage that it gets is atrocious, on top of the fact that replacement parts are more and more expensive. And with the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq drawing down, those parts are going to become less and less available. So it might be a free gift now, but it's going to be a liability and a headache later. And other sheriffs and other chiefs of police have found that replacing their own MRAPs with Bearcats is the superior option because the Bearcat was built for policing functions, whereas the MRAP was built for the functions that I had to deal with in Afghanistan. Large open desert fields and improvised explosive devices. The Bearcat is much more suited to policing operations. And in terms of demilitarization, it's not sending SWAT teams in with squirt guns, it's about changing the way we approach problems. The no-knock warrant is one of the most dangerous warrants to execute, and there are juries in Texas and in Georgia that have found in favor of homeowners who have shot and sometimes even killed SWAT team members because they didn't identify themselves as police, and the homeowners had every reason to believe that this was a home invasion. In the city of Detroit, there are street gangs who use fake police symbols, fake police gear, and emulate the tactics of a no-knock warrant to break into people's homes and commit burglaries. So the no-knock warrant, the element of surprise, and Bill Masters out in San Miguel County has said that the element of surprise is not worth it because it gets innocent people hurt, and if the wrong address happens, you'll end up finding nothing, and it can get officers hurt. So demilitarization is not about sending police in unprepared, it's about making sure that what we're doing is not endangering people unnecessarily. All right, my question now. All right, question for you, Sheriff Walcher. In your 2015 and 2016 annual reports, you've stated that we've arrested over 391 people for marijuana offenses. Marijuana offenses got 0 mentions in your 2017 report. Why is that?
The bureau chiefs are responsible for, in essence, compiling what is in that report based upon what's going on in our community, what information we want to put out to our community, and ultimately any hot topics that we want to address or things we are very proud of. And ultimately the bureau chiefs are responsible for preparing that. I do review that report, and I don't go back to prior reports to look at what we've reported on or not to determine what goes on in a current annual report. A current annual report addresses the issues or provides information about what we want to report for what had occurred in a given calendar year. Okay. Tyler, this question's for you. You may get questions later regarding your time with the Northglenn Police Department, but I do have a question about that. 4 years ago, when you were speaking to and answering questions from the FOP regarding your employment with the Northglenn Police Department, you stated that you would make available all documents related to your departure and the separation agreement that you had with the city with the membership of the FOP. Okay, are you still willing to do that?
Yes, I'll make the separation agreement available.
And what about all the documents related to the internal affairs investigation?
The rest of that is sealed with the Northglenn Police Department through their attorney. So I would have to request that through them, and they have all the right to hold that information. So
Okay. A follow-up. Are you willing to sign a release that would allow the FOP, Eric, or myself to obtain those documents directly from the Northglenn Police Department or your attorney?
yes, I mean I've had issues with getting those from the Northglenn Police Department, but if you guys would like to see that, I would be more than willing to.
So the FOP
yes.
or myself or Eric could
Yes.
get a release signed by you
Yes.
that we could go directly to them and get that information. Okay, thank you.
With that being said, I left the Northglenn Police Department in 2012, and my integrity was questioned by a chief. And I didn't feel that I could appropriately do my job for a chief that was questioning my integrity. I was railroaded from a police department after earning the Adams County Peace Officer of the Year award, and so I decided for myself to separate my employment with the Northglenn Police Department. So.
Okay, thank you.
Your question.
What role, this is for Sheriff Walcher. What role does human resources play in hiring and the retention of staff at any level? Has there been any changes made recently to improve or limit the role that HR plays in the hiring process? I know you'd mentioned that there's 13 different things that you guys are working on. Can you share a couple of those with the membership?
Yeah, I'll share a bunch of it with the membership. Ultimately, yes. There were several questions there, but we're not limiting at all the role that human resources has in hiring people and things like that. But some of the things we are doing include, we are now utilizing investigators to assist with running background checks to help speed up the background process. We are utilizing modified duty non-certified deputy sheriff staff to assist HR, such as sending out correspondence for backgrounds and sending follow-up correspondence so we can speed up that process. We are utilizing a pool of deputy sheriffs to assist with job fairs and community events to further promote our organization and hiring quality employees. We allow patrol, lateral, and non-certified deputy new hires to start when they become available and when we make that offer instead of waiting till the actual academy date, because oftentimes that academy date may be weeks or months out. So we attempt to get them on board so they don't maybe jump to another organization. We're established a scholarship with the Arapahoe Community College for non-certified deputy sheriffs to attend ACC's post-academy on their own time. We attend many more community events than in the past, work with better coordination with community resources and public affairs, public information to increase our presence. We've increased a referral incentive from $150 to $1,000. We've developed an overall better social media and web strategy. We are working with public affairs, public information on recruiting videos. We've already done some recruiting videos for dispatch, and we're finishing one for inmate services technicians. We're utilizing Explorers as a resource for our part-time positions as a stepping stone into full-time positions to include, and there's several Explorers who have done that, who've went into part-time position, who have ultimately went on to be in full-time positions with the Sheriff's Office. So the bottom line on all of that is anything we can do to attract qualified individuals who can pass our background and pass our battery of tests that we had, never relaxing our standards. But we want these employees, so we've taken a lot of efforts to not only attract more individuals, but also get them on board faster and try to go through that background process, of hiring process, much quicker than we ever have before.
Is there a commissioned officer in the HR department that assists HR in selecting candidates?
Yes. We, as far as I know, we've always had a commissioned officer in here. One of them that is in the audience today used to be in that position. Two of them used to be in that position. And now we have one of our former investigators, Dana O'Neill, in there. And I've personally spoken with Dana about that process, and ultimately very complimentary of what she walked into. And I think she has a much better understanding of the intricacies and the difficulties in hiring and trying to find great applicants for our organization. And she made a statement to me when I spoke with her about 2 weeks ago that she wants to find a way to better educate all of her employees about the processes, because she, from what she heard while she was assigned an investigation, was not very complimentary towards HR, but when she gets in there, she actually understands how difficult it is, and she wants to truly try to educate a lot of our employees about the difficulty of that position. She is an incredible, as all the individuals we've had working in that shop, really good representatives of this organization, and they just want to make sure that we have absolutely the best applicants we can get.
All right, my question here is for Tyler Brown. Tyler Brown, you've spoken in favor of Moms Demand Action's general platform and their general stances and their advocacy. My question to you is, as sheriff, how do you interpret the Second Amendment?
Very clearly, citizens have the right to bear arms. So, with that being said, everyone in this room has been through some type of post-firearms training. State of Colorado deems it necessary to have us go through, I believe it's 168 hours of firearms training. And then they've also deemed it necessary that we address our firearms training on an annual basis because it's a perishable skill. The Moms Demand Action Group actually does not restrict people in owning guns. They would like to see more education behind gun ownership and the carrying of weapons by citizens. So us as professionals that have gone through post academies and do our annual research through post understand that it is a perishable skill, and we train on it annually, and we spend a lot of our time at the academy training on it. So my big thing is, why not ask the citizens who we're issuing concealed carry permits to attend a little bit more training? So that's my stance with the Moms Demand Action Group.
Excellent.
Tyler, in the past 4 years since you ran for sheriff in 2014, what have you done to prepare for the office of sheriff?
Well, I started working with the Mountain View Police Department again. I've become very involved with that organization in terms of grant writing, command level stuff. I've been asked to be the officer in command when the chief is out of town and not available. I've really tried to get out and get into the community and just hear what they're saying right now. And so those are the things that I've focused on right now, is my professional development as an officer and just community contacts with the people that we serve on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Mulder, are you currently a police officer or have attended any post training?
I am not, and I have currently not attended post training.
How do you plan to juggle the full-time job of the Arapahoe County Sheriff, which is a lot more than Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and a full-time law enforcement academy, which can take up to 26 weeks if you're doing it full-time, and up to an entire year if you're doing it part-time?
In terms of the part-time status, that would be the way I would have to go. Arapahoe Community College offers a part-time post-certification course for this course, for that exact purpose, because there's full-time deputies who need to get their own post-certification. I understand as sheriff I will have far more duties than the average entry-level deputy, which is why I also have to rely on my staff as well for that initial first year. That means having to rely on the decisions that my undersheriff makes and taking the advice of my staff into consideration. I will be available for my department as much as possible. I'm single, I have no children of my own, I'm not married, so post-certification and running the sheriff's department will be my biggest priorities because I have no other obligations.
Okay.
All right. And my question is for you, Sheriff Walcher. You've repeatedly stated that experience is imperative to this office. With that in mind, who did you vote for president in 2016 and why?
I voted for Donald Trump. we all had a choice to make. And with that choice, you had to evaluate the totality of circumstances. And I came down to the decision of voting for President Trump.
All right, that's my
Okay.
question.
Eric, with the passing of Aurora Mayor Steve Hogan, you had applied to be the mayor and weren't selected. I believe then you applied to fill a vacant council position and you weren't selected. Is your interest more in the realm of city government or being in law enforcement?
So the second part with the at-large vacancy is not correct, Sheriff. I did not apply for that position. I did apply for the position of the vacancy of mayor.
Okay.
In the words of Wayne Gretzky, you miss every shot you do not take. And from what I saw, based on what was going on, there was precisely one applicant for the position of mayor, and that was the eventual selectee, Bob Laguerre. I wanted to ensure that the people of Aurora and the City Council of Aurora had more than just what's known as a Bolshevik ballot, in which there's one official choice and only one official choice. So I saw this as an opportunity to apply and state, I care about my community and I want to make sure that we have a full slate of choices that are available. And for the longest time, it was literally myself and Bob Laguerre as the applicants for mayor. I am interested in city government because I do live in the city of Aurora and I care about the city of Aurora, which is why I also want to apply for the position of sheriff, because I live in Ward 6 of Aurora, which is interspersed with the city of Centennial. I spend a lot of time in Centennial, and I spend a fair amount of time in the rest of the county as well. So whether the opportunity is the position of sheriff or the position of mayor or something down the line, I want people to know I care about this community and I'm willing to step up and file the paperwork if I believe that we need to do things differently.
This is for Sheriff Walcher. The non-certified deputy program puts deputies through a 16-week academy. Is that correct?
I think it's less than 16
Is it
weeks.
less than 16 weeks? Okay. Has there been any discussion to phase out the Deputy B program after the current Deputy Bs become post-certified?
To phase out the non-certified deputy sheriff program.
Yes.
I have had that discussion, yes.
Okay. And what were the outcomes of that discussion?
The discussion's still not done. I'm considering that. The reality, though, and I know, at least on your website, you talk about wanting to post-certify every deputy sheriff in the sheriff's office, and I think that's where you're going here. The reality is, with doing that, we've got roughly 115 non-certified deputy sheriffs. And to try to, and actually I've done this before in Jefferson County when I ran academies, when a new sheriff did the same thing, and I ran numerous academies of people that were non-certified and working in the jail. The issue comes down to cost. When you have that many people, when you have 115 people, and there's a salary difference between them and post-certified deputy sheriffs we have, and then you take the training time and the backfill time of trying to state certify, post-certify roughly 115 people, it is an incredibly expensive venture. And in these challenging financial times, the decisions have to come down to, is that where we maybe want to attempt to place our money, or do we want to go down a road of making sure our deputy sheriffs are fairly paid? You talked about we're in the top 25% or the 75th percentile.
I think top 5 metro area, right?
Top 25%,
okay.
roughly. Do you start whittling away and maybe having to reduce our salaries of our current deputy sheriffs because it costs a lot of money? Or do you potentially not get new staff because you're spending much more money state certifying all these deputy sheriffs and then having to pay a higher salary? So ultimately, at the end of the day, I was dealt the hand of having non-certified deputy sheriffs. They're great employees. They do great work. But it is a challenge if we were wanting to post-certify those deputy sheriffs. I will tell you, if it would have been my call and I would have had an impact or influence on it, I would have not started that program. However, we have it and I'm the one that has to deal with it. But great employees. We've increased the number actually of the non-certified deputy sheriffs that get to go through a post-academy from just 1 or 2 a year to now upwards of 10 to 20 a year that we run through post-certified academies. But it is a challenge, but it all comes down to money. And I don't want to take away from current employees of a very large expense that would come with post-certifying roughly 115 people.
And I don't get me wrong, I think the deputy Bs do an amazing job. I don't think
the
non-certified, yeah, the non-certified deputies do an amazing job. That's without question, and that's why I did address in my website that I would like to try to work to get them post-certified, because I think that we're possibly losing a lot of qualified candidates to other agencies for post-certification. I would try to address things with the post board because of the training that the non-certs go through, that they probably meet a lot of requirements set forth by post. And I would go to and try to advocate on their behalf to try to maybe work a modified academy to try to get them post-certified quicker, because I think that would allow us to fill some vacancies in other areas of the sheriff's office. So just, you brought that up on my website, so I just wanted to address that. So.
All right, my question is for Tyler Brown here. Tyler, you mentioned that community outreach is important to the sheriff's department. My question is, what's the last non-campaign related event you attended?
The last non-campaign, I think it was a bingo night at my wife's school. So my wife's a school teacher in Cherry Creek schools. We have 2 little girls who attend school in the district. I try to be at all the community events that the school puts on. My wife and I are very dedicated to Arapahoe County and the continuation of good education throughout the county. So that was the last non-campaign event that I attended.
And when was that, you said again?
It was at the end of the school year. So.
Cool. All right.
Okay. Tyler, your website discusses school safety as a priority. In fact, it's maybe your highest priority. It is mine. But can you talk about the districts we serve, how we serve them, and what changes you would make in our school resource officer program?
I don't think I'd make any changes to the school resource officer program. I know that we serve several school districts throughout the county. One of the programs that I was going to have implemented is something that I believe you guys use at your substations, which is briefing via Skype, or a program like Skype, and possibly putting an office in local schools and parking patrol vehicles at those schools and allowing deputies maybe a little bit less of a commute to a school close in their neighborhood, which would allow them at the beginning of a shift a couple times a week to create some contacts inside of the school in a positive nature. So I wouldn't change the school resource officer program right now. I would just expand upon it. So I think it's important that we have a presence in the school which allows students to make positive contacts with the great men and women that we have serving in this agency. So.
Can you just, the question, talk about the districts we do serve, and then how we serve them with our program.
Okay.
How do we
It was 3 parts, so I tried to get to them.
Yeah, how do we deploy our SROs?
I know that elementary schools are assigned in groups, and they're assigned a single SRO, and that SRO travels around making contacts at those schools. I don't know how many specific high school resource officers and middle school. I believe that there's 2 here at Eagle Crest and 1 up the hill at Thunder Ridge. So I would need a little bit more information about that. Okay. But I know that there are SROs already in schools. And so I would continue to make sure that that is very, very important. It's very important to me, but I'd make sure that we continue to do that for the school districts that we serve.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This goes back again to the non-certified and hiring process, Sheriff. Has there been discussion about hiring directly from the street with no experience and sending people through a post-academy to start?
Yes, we've had the discussion. However, let me take that a little bit further. You know, we maybe everybody knows this, everybody out here knows this, but really we have 2 methods to get to patrol. Our post-certified deputy sheriffs that come out of the jail that potentially could be currently enrolled in a post-academy that we operate with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, or directly from the outside if they are post-certified and via lateral hire. We have talked about hiring right from the outside, sending them to a post-academy and then into patrol. That's been some discussion, although I am resistant to that. And the reason is we have about 115 again very dedicated, non-certified deputy sheriff employees in our organization. And if we started to go to the outside, hire them directly into a post-academy, the message, I think we could get some qualified and some good people, but the message that we would send to 115 very good employees that do great work for us is, you're not going to be able to go to patrol. It's going to limit your ability to get post-certified, and I just don't think it's a good message. I mean, what we have works. I think we need to, and we are increasing our efforts, but to me, that's a good portion of our employees of our organization, and I do not want to send that message to non-certified deputy sheriffs that it's going to diminish their opportunities, because consequently, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to start to go look elsewhere very quickly if they don't feel they ever have an opportunity. So has it been discussed? We've discussed about everything, and that's one thing we have discussed. Yes.
Sheriff Walcher, my question is for you.
Did you say Sheriff Mulder? You almost did. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Not yet, Sheriff, not yet.
Okay.
My question for you, Sheriff, is, it's been brought to my attention that there are people in their background phase currently working inside the jail that have not had a physical evaluation yet. Why is that?
They're working in the jail without a physical evaluation?
Yes, Sheriff.
When you say a physical evaluation, what are you referring to?
Physical, fitness evaluation, things of that nature.
Go into more detail, because you're saying two different things. Are you meaning a medical evaluation or a physical fitness testing? What are you referring to?
Both of them, Sheriff.
Okay, two things. When we hire an employee, every employee goes through a medical exam, so I don't think that's what you refer to. You may be referring to a physical fitness test. We have recently developed, probably everybody in this room knows, we've recently developed a physical fitness test. It's absolutely voluntary, and we just implemented that, so potentially there are people who have not been through that physical agility course. But people that we hired have gone through all the components of our hiring process.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Okay. Eric, another one of your, we talked about demilitarization. And in fact, just so you know, we just ordered a Bearcat, a $280,000 Bearcat for the Sheriff's Office and SWAT team. And it's a great tool for our staff. So I don't necessarily agree on all of your thoughts about demilitarization of the police, but one of your other platform agenda items is decriminalization. To advance that agenda, what will you do and what are you proposing to decriminalize?
My decriminalization platform, it goes down to one simple thing. The war on drugs has not been effective, it has not worked, it hasn't made our communities safer, and it hasn't reduced crime. As sheriff, I cannot tell the federal government to stop the war on drugs, but I can say we're not going to continue this approach any longer. Again, going back to Sheriff Bill Masters out in San Miguel County, he wrote an entire book, Drug War Addiction, detailing his experiences with the war on drugs and how it hasn't worked for him or his department. And he has stated that when you use alternatives to incarceration, that does reduce the rate of crime. That does reduce the rate of recidivism, in which people commit offenses and wind back up in the system. And there are county commissioners who are committed to using alternatives to incarceration whenever possible. So in terms of decriminalization, it's about using treatment when it's appropriate, so that way we don't have to continue this failed federal policy that's not working.
Are you suggesting that as sheriff that you would not enforce laws?
What I'm suggesting is that as sheriff, I will uphold the peace, because that's what the Colorado Revised Statutes state. They state that the priority of the sheriff's department is peacekeeping. And if no-knock warrants are causing innocent people to get hurt and officers injured, that's not keeping the peace anymore. So if there are unconstitutional laws that are on the books, I will absolutely challenge those laws, and I will invite any legislators to do the same.
Eric, with all due respect, are you suggesting that you will direct individuals not to enforce the law?
I will direct our individuals to prioritize on efforts on violent crime.
Okay.
Mr. Mulder, how many no-knock warrants have currently taken place in Arapahoe County where deputies have been injured by the homeowner?
Those statistics are actually very difficult to come by because there's only one state in the entire union that requires any department report on those, and that's the state of Utah.
I mean, as a member of a tactical team, all the warrants that we ever served were knock and announce warrants. So I think that the implication that they are dangerous, yes, but they do serve a purpose in certain situations. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Your question?
Yep, absolutely. Sheriff Walcher, my question is for you. With talks of a possible new jail being built, what do you see as the most important aspect that has to go into this new jail?
Have you been in our jail?
Not yet, Sheriff.
Okay. So every aspect of a jail is absolutely critical to the other parts of a jail. So we have a plan. We have a plan, and we think it's a good plan. That ultimately our first phase of our process would be to build a new book and release center. Because the facility, most people in this room know, the facility we have now is upwards of 32 or 33 years old, and it's falling apart. And there's people in this audience that have to work in that environment, work in that jail every day, and it's falling apart. The other reality is we know that buildings don't last forever. So we know at some point, what we don't know is when, we will need jail. We have a phased approach that would allow for the building of a book and release center, which then at some point would serve what would be a new jail. So in a jail, in our jail, every piece of that jail is critical to other pieces. When cars come in and they park in a sally port and that is secured so they can get arrestees out of cars and move them into a booking area. The booking area itself, the classification area, how we serve food, how we provide mental health services, how we move inmates to and from court, how we release individuals, how they are housed, in what type of environment for minimum, medium, and maximum security. Do we have housing for special needs inmates, for violent inmates, for inmates that are on some sort of administrative or disciplinary segregation? So there's no one piece that is more critical, but we have a job, and our job is to provide a safe and secure environment for our deputy sheriffs and provide for a safe and secure environment for those that are in our jail. So there's no one piece really more important than any other piece. Okay? All right. For both of you, I'm just curious about your opinion on this. I get asked about charging municipal inmates, municipal governments, for use of jail beds in our detention facility. Thank you. Do you support charging municipalities for the use of jail beds in the sheriff's office detention facility?
Specifically for municipal charges?
Yes, municipal individuals sentenced to a jail.
I think we should allow specific jurisdictions to have an allotted number of beds and then work with different jurisdictions on if they need more beds. Is it possible that we would need to ask for some assistance in holding their inmates on municipal charges? Yes. I think that that's something that we can approach with each individual agency and jurisdiction on a need basis.
Okay. And again, do you support charging municipalities for the use of jail beds in the sheriff's office detention facility?
Absolutely, Sheriff. In the Libertarian Party, we used to have a slogan, there is no such thing as a free lunch. If municipalities wish to use the county jail and they are not actively paying for it right now, they need to pay to make sure that we are housing their inmates for them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Condition of the jail's been, speaking of the condition of the jail, the county has been the recipient of the Triple Crown Award for the last 3 years, correct?
Accreditation cycles.
Yes, okay, accreditation cycles. Does the jail operate under the guidelines of the accreditation 12 months out of the year? Is it continually meeting the requirements of that accreditation?
Yes.
Okay.
We have assessors come out, depending on which accreditation it is, and we have 5 different accreditations, but depending on which accreditation is, they come out on different cycles. And when they do come out, I mean, ultimately they look at what you have been doing for the past years since that last accreditation period.
And what is the total cost to the sheriff's office to be accredited by the 5 different groups?
Staff time, we have, I believe it's 4 FTEs that are in our accreditation unit. And then ultimately there are administrative costs up and beyond that. But it's a very, very small percentage of our budget. And the reason we do that is that I believe that forces us and it ensures that we meet best practices that are recognized by these accrediting bodies, whether it be CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, or the National Commission on Correctional Health Care, or the American Correctional Association. But we believe that by meeting those best practices, we are a better organization because of it.
And you do operate within those all the time?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is for you, Sheriff Walcher. You recently did a visit to Jeff Sessions in Washington, D.C., and you've said that he's a pretty good advocate and someone who wants to help us out in terms of school safety. What does Attorney General Sessions' plan for school safety look like?
I don't know what his plan is. I can't speak for him. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you the reason I was in Washington to meet with the Attorney General. I was invited by the National Sheriff's Association, one of 4 sheriffs, to go back there, asked to be back there, to meet with the Attorney General of the United States regarding school safety and active shooters. I have some experience related to all of those things, and he wanted my opinion, from what I was told, about what has changed in the realm of active shooters and school safety. So seated across from him, told him my experiences with that and some of the challenges and needs that we have at the local level. And some of those are inclusive of financial needs. Some of the conversations came back to mental health and some failures of the mental health system, in my opinion, as it related to the shooting at Arapahoe High School. I don't know what his plan is. I will also add that because of that meeting, there are a lot of individuals, a lot of entities out there, the United States Secret Service, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Homeland Security, even magazines, that have come out with what they feel are best practices when it comes to school safety and responding to the active shooter and the prevention of such. And within the past 2 weeks, I've been asked by the National Sheriffs of America to sit on a very small subcommittee to finally develop what sheriffs believe are the best practices surrounding school safety, response to incidents, and ultimately what we'd all like, the prevention of such incidents. And I was asked by the National Sheriff's Association just because of my experiences and the experiences we've had locally, to include, in my case, Jefferson County and in Arapahoe County. So school safety is the most important thing we do, in my opinion, and I'm proud to have been selected to that. And I think this will be the document that will lay out to the 3,000 plus sheriff's offices in this nation about what those best practices should be. And it is a very small subcommittee with about 4 sheriffs on it and several executive directors of Sheriff's Association. But this subcommittee literally just started in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm anxious to have a product done sometime this year. I will also say, when it comes to school safety, we serve 4 different school districts: Cherry Creek, Littleton, Byers, and Deer Trail. And the districts we serve, not only do we have the strongest presence, as far as I know, of any agency in this state as far as our deployment and dedication to schools, as far as the number of SROs we have per school, per high school, and even down into the elementary school level. But we have a very strong commitment to that. And we have gone with, for instance, the Cherry Creek School District and developed standard response protocols with, in that case, the 5 agencies that serve the Cherry Creek School District. So we, in my opinion, we here at the local level in Arapahoe County and at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office have some of the best trained deputy sheriffs, SROs, plans and prevention efforts available, and we're even always working to be better at what we do. But I'm very blessed, we are very fortunate to do such a great job in our schools and working with school districts we have. Okay. Tyler, would you, the jail, have you been in the jail?
No.
Okay.
The last time I went to tour the jail in 2014, I was told that I wasn't allowed to tour the jail because it was something that they didn't do at the time. So I spoke to a front desk person. They said I couldn't enter the jail. And I've also been in contact with a county commissioner trying to set up an appointment, and I haven't been able to get
We
that.
allow those tours. So
Yeah,
we'll allow that
okay,
tour.
please.
But
I would love to
would you
be in.
talk about kind of the history of the jail and the ADP of the jail, bookings and average length of stay, and what are the challenges surrounding our ADP?
Well, the history of the jail was built in the mid-'80s to house approximately 400 inmates, and now the jail's housing approximately 1,000 inmates on a daily basis. They're booking in anywhere from 17 to 18,000 people a year, which in its inception was only designed to book in about 8,000. So without seeing the facility, I know that the deputies that are, and the civilian citizens that are inside the jail are working within the confines of what they have, and it can always be improved upon. But the condition right now, from what I understand, talking to different people and county commissioners, is it's in rough shape, and it's going to need to be replaced. And I don't, as you stated earlier today, we just don't know when that's going to be. But that's what I know about the jail, in terms of how many people it's housing on a daily basis, movement in and out of the jail, and the condition that it's in right now.
Okay. A little follow-up. Yeah. Do you think we use the jail appropriately? Do you think we have the right people in jail?
I think we do.
Okay.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I really trust in the job that the deputies are out doing on the street in the city of Centennial and in unincorporated Arapahoe County. And the law enforcement officers across this county are out there doing the best that they can and enforcing the laws to the best of their ability. So I think the jail is being used appropriately. I think that those conditions, with it being built in 1986, are out of any one of our control. So I think you were finishing up at the FBI in '86, so you didn't have a say in it. I didn't have a say in it because I was 4. So that's where we're at right now. So we're going to have to address those on a daily basis and address the major issues on a daily basis to try to make it a functional facility for now, while we're looking at the implementation of a new jail.
And do you know the makeup of the jail? Do you know who we have in jail in general terms?
No, demographic-wise or
charge-wise or
no,
their status?
I don't. I would have to go and do some more research on that. So.
Okay. And kind of same question. Do you think we're using the jail appropriately?
I believe you're doing the best job that you can, Sheriff, but I believe that there's always room for improvement. Right now, a big statistic in jail is that a lot of people who are in it are there because they can't afford bail bonds for one reason or another. In the city of Aurora, Judge Sean Day is actually experimenting with bail bonds reductions, and what they're finding is that less people have to spend time in jail waiting for their trial. That means they can continue to work at their job, they can continue to pay their rent, they can continue to take care of their families, and it's far less disruptive to their family lives. Now, we can't take this approach to everyone. There are violent people who do have to be in jail, like the Aurora theater shooter. He had to be in jail, and no reasonable judge would give that man bail. But in terms of bail reform, I believe that's something the sheriff should be talking about with the county commissioners and legislators and anybody who can make that happen.
Sir, is there a safety concern by deputies in the jail and on patrol in terms of short-staffed teams or minimum staffing operation?
Yes, I would say there should always be a concern for safety based upon staffing. At certain times, you cannot possibly have enough deputy sheriffs to do everything you have to do. So yes, there's always that concern. I think where you want to go here is potentially, I'm going to just keep going. What are we doing about it?
Right.
So even unbeknownst to the people in this room, ultimately, we've added, just so you know, in the last 6 years, we've added 55 FTEs at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office in all areas of the organization. And that includes detentions, patrol, support services. Now I'm going to go over some of those additions when I do a closing statement. So we have made efforts to increase our staffing. At the same time, though, our workload has increased. Our calls for service have gone up in the city as well as the county, and we know that. And the beauty, for instance, the beauty of the contract that we have now signed with Centennial that was effective 1/1 again of 2018 is that it allows for what I think is a better method to ask the city for additional personnel. We are literally this week, as in Thursday, I met with the budget committee of the city of Centennial and proposed to them our budget package request for the city of Centennial for 2019 is going to be 21 FTEs. And 14 to 16 of those, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but 14 to 16 of those, and this is just Centennial, will be sworn individuals. The other thing I will tell you in our budget plan to approach the county with for 2019 will be even a larger ask when it comes to full-time employees. So we have increased in size since I've been sheriff to the tune of 55-ish, but next year is going to be even a bigger ask because we need it. And to address some of those not only officer safety concerns, but response times and things like that. What has happened, in my opinion, as call load has increased in patrol, and we're talking just patrol at this point in time, as call load has increased, we respond very well to those very high priority calls and things like that, but what falls through the cracks are those lower priority calls and the time in which it takes us to get to those calls. And the other thing we are seeing because of this increase in our calls for service are a rather substantial decline in the number of traffic tickets we write. Reason being, if you're a traffic car, if there are patrol calls for service or emergency calls for service, we're pulling traffic cars away from their traffic duties. And the other thing that's happening, if you're a district car, if you have to spend more time on calls than you have in the past, ultimately, you're not writing as many tickets. So we have seen all of this, but because of this new contract, we have a better method, quite honestly, to try to get full-time employees. And like I said, on Thursday, met with the budget committee and asked for 21 new positions with the city of Centennial.
One quick follow-up question, if you don't mind, Mr. Mulder.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that the increase in calls for service is related to the minimum staffing or the lack of full staffing on patrol and the ability for the deputies to provide that professional service even for those lower priority calls?
I would say that the entirety of Colorado is.
That was a
sorry.
follow-up for
I heard
the
Mr.
sheriff.
Mulder.
Oh, I heard Mr.
I said
Mulder.
Mr. Mulder. I just said Mr. Mulder. I have a follow-up question. So
Okay.
that was a follow-up question
okay.
for you.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
So
Tyler.
do you think that the lack of staffing is the cause of the rise in calls for service across the county?
Not necessarily, and there could be a correlation. Ultimately, if you lack staffing and can't do as much proactive work, then potentially you're going to have an increased calls for service and increased crime. So there's a balance in the deployment of patrol personnel. Obviously, if we put a cop on every corner, we probably won't have as much crime. But we can't do that because of cost. So I'm sure there's a correlation. Is it a direct correlation or an indirect correlation? I don't know, but I'm sure there is some sort of a correlation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my question is for you, Tyler Brown. Going back to community outreach again. You say it's important, and it is. My question is, what would you say you would do differently with your community outreach than Sheriff Walcher is currently doing?
I've asked Sheriff Walcher to be part of some of those community outreach sessions due to the fact that I am a resident of the city of Centennial. And I guess the biggest thing that I would do is have more regular meetings and invite more community groups in to make them feel included. I think as law enforcement officers, we do a really good job of understanding what each other does on a daily basis. I think the everyday average Joe citizen does not understand what we do on a daily basis. They don't understand that there's cell phones going off, there's radios going off, there's different calls for service at different priority levels. So I would really try to reach out to as many community groups as possible to bring them in to educate them on what we're doing. And that would be solely on my shoulders to do as the sheriff. So those are the things that I would do. And I haven't currently been involved in any of those community outreach sessions. So,
Did you say that you asked me to be
I
a
did.
part of those? When was that?
right after the election in 2014, we sat down
Okay.
and had
Okay.
coffee. And
Okay.
I said, you know, if
Okay.
you ever need help, please let me know. I'd love to be involved in the community
Okay.
outreach portion. So.
Okay. Can I also just provide a follow-up? We have community resource officers, and everybody in this room knows that, or most people in this room know that. We have a lot of demands on them, quite honestly. And just a couple years ago, we had 2 of those individuals. We added another community resource officer. Now we have 3 of them that work full-time, and trust me, they have a busy full-time schedule. And part of that centennial package that I just discussed would be to add a 4th community resource officer to increase those efforts. So we're going down that road. And I will tell you personally, I hand out a lot of business cards. My cell phone number is on my business cards. And I am so available to the public, and I do get a lot of phone calls, I get a lot of emails, and I will tell you when I personally can go out and meet with our community groups or meet with our HOAs or even individuals, I do that. So I think generally between our public information efforts, our social media efforts, our community resource officers that do such a great job and are everywhere all the time, it seems, and all the different community events we do that invite other members of the organization to participate in, Sheriff's Office open house, award ceremonies, whatever it is, I'll tell you, I think we do a phenomenal job reaching out to our community. We do. Now, could we do better? Yes. And that's the reason I want to add another community resource officer within that unit.
I think it's you now, Sheriff.
Okay. Eric, I have one more, well, this is for both of you. I'll start over here. Have you met with members of Centennial City Council or the city manager to have any level of discussion about the contract we have with them or the services that we provide to the city of Centennial?
No, I have not, Sheriff.
Okay, thank you.
I'm currently in planning, scheduling with city council members to sit down and have those discussions.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay. I'll follow up with one more question. The current, or you stated that there's going to be a new book and release center. Is there a scheduled?
There's one in the plan. We have conceptual designs. I didn't say we're going to have one.
Okay.
But
Sorry, I misunderstood
we
you.
have plans.
Okay. And where is that going to be, at the location of the current jail, or is it going to be in a new location somewhere in the county?
The county owns the piece of land between the Denver Broncos and our headquarters, back to the office park to the north. We own that acreage right in there, and that new book and release center would be on that acreage, and in the event, or when we do have to build a new jail, it will be on that same site. So there's a master plan that's being done right now. The other piece of this whole master plan ultimately is the courthouse. We've got the traditional courthouse, which we've always had. Courthouse 2 used to be an office building that's now serves courts. And I'll tell you, the condition of the courts is not good either. And from an officer safety perspective or the movement of inmates perspective, it could be a lot better. So ultimately, that master plan would include then what to do with that whole site to include the courts. So it is a very complicated issue that we have put thousands of man hours in, as well as the county and some contractors, architects, but we have conceptual drawings and plans for where it'd be located, but between Sheriff's Office headquarters and the current jail.
And is there an estimated cost right now for that new center?
Yes and no. It depends on what are you talking about, the book and release center?
Book and release center. I mean, obviously, the jail is going to be a much larger expense.
There's varying models of that. Some models are just a book and release center in and of itself. Some models contain what maybe could be a detox center. Some models include what could be our RISE program that we would operate in another facility right there. So there's all kinds of different phases and models, and we've got costs with each, but tens and tens of millions of dollars. Yes.
All right, I'll go ahead and do the last question of my own, which is for Sheriff Walcher. Sheriff Walcher, I applaud your efforts to
use suicide preventative measures in the jail. I saw you installed those new steps, and I saw you install the plexiglass within the jail, which I think was a really great effort. There was a case a couple years back with the contractor, so this isn't you specifically, but this happened within the jail. Jeffrey Lillis died after being denied medical treatment after requesting it multiple times, and the same contractor is still providing medical services. Have they taken steps to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again?
I'm not going to speak to individual cases within the jail, and I'm not going to speak about any information that would potentially jeopardize any case or develop an opinions about any of our contractors or things like this. So I'm not going to talk about any case, any particular
So that's still
case.
litigating, Sheriff?
I'm not sure at this
Okay.
moment in time.
All right, that is my question.
Okay. Should be done.
Take a 10-minute break. Everybody's ready.
the money's
Since
there.
The members that are here, you guys have priority on email questions. With just that round table, 90% of the questions are already kind of eliminated because they were mostly answered through a lot of that, but they still have quite a few email questions that came in. So anybody that's here, if you have questions to the candidates, please come up. We had to have you stand here just because Bartman will not pick anything up without this microphone. So it's open to you guys now. Initially, I thought of a time limit on this per response, but we'll just leave that open. You guys are allowed to rebut any answer the candidates say. It's up to you. So this is open forum for you guys now. So we shall begin. Whoever wants to come up first.
First question, do you guys care if I take my jacket off?
Rebuttal.
No, listen.
Well, mic is open. Whoever would like to start.
Somebody has to.
Organized line, organized line.
There you go. There's the first brave soul.
I thought I had to wait in line, for sure.
Hey, it just takes one to get the ball rolling, right?
Okay, so, and this question is actually for Tyler Brown. I'm sorry, wrong contact him today. So on your website, you talk about how you want to transform the sheriff's office into a transparent, efficient, fiscally responsible, and accessible office that looks to the community for support and oversight. If nobody else has questions, I have a couple of questions regarding that. So in what ways is the sheriff's office not currently transparent, and how would you change that?
You know, I'm not going to speak directly because I'm not inside the sheriff's office when it comes to that transparency. Those are things that I would like to do, and I'd like it to be more open to community members to come to the sheriff's office and see what we do on a daily basis. I think that's very important. I think if we make sure that the community knows that I have an open door policy, and that there's not a secrecy behind closed doors that we do, because nothing that we do on a daily basis as law enforcement officers is out of the norm. You know, so people need to see that we're humans doing a human job. So that's one thing that I would do.
Okay, just as a follow-up then, when you talk about to the community for support and oversight, are you talking about a citizens advisory committee, or what are you talking about when you're looking to the community for oversight?
More oversight of the direction they want to see law enforcement go in their community, not an advisory committee. I don't want to have an advisory committee, again, because the things that we do on the street usually aren't understood a lot of the time. So I would like to invite community members in to provide their oversight on what they think should happen in their community. That way we're having citizens buy in to what's happening in their community on a daily basis. So.
Okay. Anybody else?
So my question would be specifically for Tyler Brown, but I would be happy to hear the other two chime in. And you mentioned already, it's been talked about, the deputy B or the non-certified program that's in the jail. And on one of your websites, you actually said that you would like to hire directly to post academies.
Yes.
So the question essentially is, as Sheriff Walcher said, 115 approximately deputies are in that role. There's another 15 in the academy now. About a quarter of our sworn deputies are non-certified deputies in the jail. And from coming through that, I can tell you, when you start hiring people that have not worked for Arapahoe County, that have maybe no experience in law enforcement, directly to the position that is wanted and coveted by that quarter of your sworn staff, while you're also mentioning retention and you're mentioning hiring, you're mentioning getting people in there, how are you going to make that fly over with the 120-ish non-certified deputies that have been working for this agency for 5, 6, 7, 8 years that want the position that you just gave to somebody with absolutely no presence in the agency? How do you make that work?
So that's a good question, thank you. I think the most important thing there is to address the non-cert deputies, because I think that there's a lot of non-cert deputies that do covet that post-certification very highly. And I think if we can, as I stated earlier, work with post to possibly have an abbreviated academy due to the training that the non-certs already get, and allowing us to create a list and say, look, we're going to start at the top and we're going to work our way down through an assessment list and try to make sure that everybody that's in the non-cert program that wants to be post-certified, that we can post-certify them first. And I think that's how I would address that initially. And then if there's people in that non-cert program that don't have any interest in obtaining their post-certifications, allow them to continue the same job function that they are currently in right now, and then slowly, as they retire or decide to move on, we fill that position with a post-certification directly from the street. So I would make sure that we address the people in the non-cert program that do covet that post position, that we try to take care of them as quickly as we can and efficiently as we can, and then start to phase out the non-cert program and hire directly into our academy. Because I think the academy staff with Arapahoe and Douglas is turning out a tremendous product. I think that the trainers at that academy are doing a great job, and those are the type of people that I would like to see in the hiring process, because they're able to see possibly something in an individual that might not be seen by somebody in an HR department, and that might be a better fit for the agency long term. They might carry something that we're looking for as an agency that would allow them to stay here for the entirety of their career, because it's a great place to work. So that's how I would address the non-cert. So,
You understand my position on this? Okay. Okay.
Well, I believe it's kind of what Tyler Brown touched upon, is that deputies who have been waiting to get post-certified, we should be able to get them post-certification before trying to go to somebody else instead, or giving it away to somebody who hasn't been waiting. It's a good idea to get people post-certified, and I would want to see to it that we get people post-certified as quick as we can.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Does it bother non-certs in the jail when laterals are hired directly into a patrol level position when they've been sitting on a possible assessment list for 12 months? Is that an area of contention?
Are you saying specifically for the ones that are on a lateral, or that are currently on a list to go to patrol?
That are either currently on a list or that have the desire to earn their post. Have you seen that creates?
So I guess there's two sides of that. And the first one I would say was their animosity or contention because people sat on a list and did not get to go to patrol, that they were on a list to go to patrol and other people were hired. Absolutely. And then I think what was beneficial to many of us is Sheriff Walcher became the sheriff, and he changed that. So now we don't have people dying on lists. It's what we refer to it as. We don't have people dying on lists to go to patrol.
Right.
We refer to it as dying on the list, or the list dying on you. So I don't think we've had anybody in years that was on the patrol list that did not make it. That list is getting exhausted. I believe every list that's come out, if anybody here knows, but I think every list that's come out in years has been exhausted, meaning everybody on the list got out, and that was a huge thing. Is there a level of contention when we're hiring laterals to patrol when there's non-certifieds in the jail that want that? I think there is, but this actually kind of poses my second question, follow up with that. It sounds great to post-certify everybody who wants to be post-certified. Right. But you're already talking about our minimum staffing and not getting enough bodies in the jail and having to get enough people hired. So how are we going to simultaneously get all these non-certified people hired without hiring more people in there to do the job while they're in their academy? Or are we going to be hiring all these people directly to the jail and then sending them to academy afterwards, meaning these people now, again, got that promotion before them? Like, there's a lot of logistics there. The theory sounds great. It's just, it's not utopia. So I'm more like, how are you going to make that happen?
Again, I would go to the post board, because the way that I understand the non-cert deputy training is that they receive enough training in certain areas to be post certified. And if we can adjust some of that training to get people in those areas, whether it be driving, shooting, arrest control, to post certification before we start doing a modified academy, because I'm not looking to send non-certs back to a full 26-week academy, because I understand when they go to a full 26-week academy, that causes issues of backfilling, overtime, and that is a logistical issue. I would like to see something along the lines of a modified training that possibly we could work into a couple hours after a shift, or build that into a work day with some overlap groups and provide that training during the day. So,
Can I also make a comment on that? I disagree with that. The problem with not the problem. The reality is, with non-certified deputy sheriffs, started that program in, I believe, 2008, 10 years ago. And if you're a non-certified deputy sheriff that went through that program 10 years ago, to say, you know what, we're just going to do a modified version of a post academy, to me that's dangerous, and it's dangerous to them, and it's dangerous to everybody else they may work with. So rather than, and there is more cost to what I'm suggesting, but I think if you're going to do it, you do it right. And I think you send a post-certified or a non-certified deputy sheriff through a full post academy, because they need to be on the same plane as that person that just graduated 2 months ago or a year ago. And I think it's very dangerous to do that to that employee and the others they work with. So I'm not a fan of trying to manipulate post rules and try to minimize training for a post-certified peace officer in the state of Colorado. I think it has to be the full gamut, because you don't know what their skill areas are. They should ultimately, should pass every test and go through the whole process. So a little bit of difference of opinion. I understand what Tyler's saying, but I think they have to go through the full gamut, because I want the best trained people doing these post-certified functions.
is the in-service training lacking in sufficiency in terms of non-cert deputies?
No.
I mean, are they?
No.
So I guess that's where my basis of just the continuing ed of post comes from, is that we're trusting in our training unit to provide the most up-to-date and current training for all personnel. Because I don't think arrest control is different in the jail than it is for a deputy on the street, correct? So if we're staying up to the standards in the jail for our non-certs, it should be fairly easy to get them up to speed because of who you guys are and the qualifications you have to do the job that you do now. So if we can do that and close that gap instead of a full 26 weeks of having to backfill somebody, I think that would be beneficial. I see what the sheriff is saying right now in terms of safety, but I think that the training right now is adequate. I mean, you've stated it's sufficient, it's adequate for the non-certs. So I think that we could create a product that is just as safe as anybody who's gone through that full 26-week academy.
So I guess we just disagree on that.
We do. That's okay.
Mr. Mulder, you said specifically in regard to demilitarizing law enforcement that you were referring specifically to MRAPs. I understand that the majority of people who use the term demilitarized law enforcement are referring not only to all armored vehicles, but to body armor, helmets, rifles, and anything associated with the military. So is it your stand that we should have those tools and equipments removed from us?
No, absolutely not, because I believe there do exist a time and a place for that. My stance with demilitarization specifically is, does that time and place have to be as much as it currently is? Because statistics are showing that SWAT team operations are being used increasingly more and more since their advent. Their advent was for very specific situations, such as hostage situations, bomb threats, active shooters, snipers, things of that nature. So instead of taking a SWAT approach as often as the rates are currently going, do we have to take that approach all the time? Like I said, that doesn't mean taking these things away, but making sure that they're used when and absolutely only when necessary.
Can you give examples in the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office where a SWAT team is used inappropriately?
That I cannot do.
Okay, so on your website, you understand that when you talk about demilitarizing law enforcement, you are pandering to an individual group of people who want to take equipment away from us. Body armor, helmets, rifles, armored vehicles. Okay, but you're saying now specifically it's the overuse of SWAT teams. But you can't refer to an instance in the Arapahoe Sheriff's Office where a SWAT team is used inappropriately. Are you going to address those issues on your website and clarify things to show that you do support law enforcement having appropriate equipment to include body armor, rifles, and armored vehicles?
Absolutely. My website does state that I want our enforcement officers to have appropriate equipment. And I will tell these groups who are pushing for taking that equipment away, I can show them. This is not being overused here, and I will make sure that it continues not to be overused here.
Okay.
Can I provide a follow-up to that, please? Maybe you know or don't. I did 7 years on a SWAT team, and I have a great appreciation. If there's any SWAT operators in there, I have a great appreciation for that. And in no way do I think we overuse our SWAT team or our K-9 unit or our bomb squad or any of our special units. And in fact, you know what? If we're going to overuse SWAT versus underutilize SWAT, we need to overutilize SWAT or bomb or K-9. I want safety, and you know what? If I have to apologize at some point in the future about the use of that team, I'll do that. But we will always err on the side of safety at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office when it comes to any special unit or any special equipment. So I just want to, most people in here know my stance, and I'm very aggressive about this stuff, but I'd much rather apologize for the overuse of a SWAT team than one of our deputy sheriffs getting hurt. And that is the bottom line. And I'll never err on the side. If there's a question about, if you're asking me, if you're a commander out there, if you're asking me, well, I'm not so sure on the SWAT team or not thing, you better be erring on the side of having the SWAT team. So.
And the sheriff and I are in agreement there. I've been on scenes of multiple patrol issued warrants. One specifically, the patrol swing shift decided that they were going to go ahead and they were going to try to execute a warrant on a guy. They hit the door. They didn't have the appropriate tools to breach that barricaded door. And as soon as the door was open, rounds were exchanged, an officer was hit, and things would have gone a lot differently had they just contacted the SWAT team. And I think SWAT teams play a very important part because they have the ability to access different weapon systems. That's part of the special weapons and tactics. So again, overutilization, as Sheriff and I see eye to eye on this one, I would much rather overuse that because of the specific training those individuals have. So I would appreciate the opportunity to apologize for overusing it to make sure that our officers stay safe on a daily basis. So.
I have another question for Mr. Mulder. You talked in regard to no-knock warrants. You'd stated that you didn't have the information about how many no-knock warrants have been issued in Arapahoe County, because it's what steps have you taken to acquire that information?
Steps I've taken to acquire that information is the same tools that any other citizen on the street would have. I try to use Google as best I can. And Google's been able to turn up a couple of results for me on a few things, but I haven't been able to find anything on that.
So you haven't made any actual requests for that information to the office?
I have not made requests to the office.
Okay. Follow-up question, sir, would be, I'm sorry, did you want to respond?
Yeah, just a suggestion. Rather than Google, if you have a specific request for information from the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, you just need to file a request for that information, and it will be processed as a records request. You'll have to pay for the research and whatever documentation there is, but rather than go through online methods, you need to come to the source, but all you have to do is ask, and we can process a records request and get you any information that we can legally and are willing to release.
Do you know the requirements and steps required to apply for and obtain a no-knock warrant in the 18th Judicial District?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
For Mr. Mulder, going with demilitarization, it sounds to me like you're willing to base each operation on a case-by-case basis, but I'm sure being someone who's been deployed before, you always want to go to the enemy with a greater firepower than what you got. Now, how are you going to be able to do that if time is of the essence?
When I was in the Army, we weren't necessarily taught that greater firepower was the superior response. Having tailored firepower is the superior response. For example, you go into a village in Afghanistan, you've got access to artillery. Artillery is not always the appropriate answer when you're trying to apprehend a member of the Taliban because of collateral damage. So in the Army, we were taught risk assessment was one of the most important processes when deciding what to do with an operation. So we have access to Air Force jets, we have access to artillery, we had access to some seriously heavy-duty firepower. We even had 50 caliber machine guns for our MRAPs, and ultimately we had to make sure that we were tailoring our response accordingly. In most of our patrols, we didn't use those 50 cals, we used 249s because they created a smaller round that wasn't going to penetrate as far and would not have caused as much collateral damage.
So what you're saying is that you're going to evaluate each operation and then designate to the SWAT team or the operators which weapons they're going to use.
I may not delegate weapons specifically, but I'll make sure I rely on the expertise of my SWAT teams, the people who are on my force, my undersheriff, and my staff, because no good leader makes a decision by themselves, and when they do that, that's when you run the risk of hitting a snag, making a mistake. So as a leader, I do have to rely on the expertise of my individuals who are there, and I have to trust their judgment. And if it turns out to be the wrong decision, I have to answer for that.
Okay. Completely different. You said something earlier before, but since you have no law enforcement experience, which also means you have no command experience, that's a huge gap that you're going to have to make up. How are you going to try to be able to do that as well as manage the personnel in the sheriff's office, civilian, certified, non-certified, and still be effective to the citizens of the county?
In terms of my command experience, I do have that in the United States military. I've operated within the capacity of a staff level officer at the battalion and at the brigade level. That means I know how to work in an organization that has anywhere from 700 to 1,000 individuals. I've delegated tasks and I've run tasks. I've gone through the United States military's basic leadership course. I've gone through the Aurora Citizens Academy. I know what it means to be a leader, which means to delegate tasks and to trust the judgment of experts who know more than you do. So even though I don't have command experience by myself, I know how to lead because I know how to follow.
Thank you.
Can I?
Absolutely.
I always want to follow up on something. You know, we trust our employees, our supervisors, our commanders, whoever it may be. And as an example of a SWAT situation, I'm not going to dictate how they utilize the equipment they have unless, and I've been around, unless I really think something's coming off the rails. But if somebody's being the bad guy, if somebody's shooting at us, if somebody's that dangerous to us, we had a homicide, as everybody knows, on Thursday. You know what? We're going to overwhelm that guy. We're not going to try to pussyfoot around and necessarily negotiate. We're fine with negotiating, but when it comes right down to the tactics, we need to be aggressive, we need to be better armed, and we need to win without our people getting hurt. And we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. Let's not get into the issue of, gee, what weapons to use and stuff like that. Here's a whole series of weapons, you're training everything. The SWAT tactical group has a mission, go meet that mission and keep it safe. But let them go do their job.
Sheriff, you're referring to the incident that happened in 2017 in Englewood, correct?
I'm not referring to any incident.
Okay. Because the Englewood incident happened precisely perfectly and exactly in line with what I believe should happen. Negotiations were tried first, people were cleared, and when the subject got to the point where nothing was feasible, an action had to be taken and that individual had to be stopped, and that did happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Mulder, I'll start with you. I have not looked at your website, I'll be honest with you, so it's a question from the crowd to explain your civil forfeiture.
In terms of civil asset forfeiture, from what I have observed and based on several cases I've seen, it's been misused way too often in this country. Instances of civil asset forfeiture have gone up by over 1,000% in this entire country from 2001 to 2014. To my understanding, because of the latest reporting requirements, there's about 5 cases in Judicial District 18 with a total of about 100,000 assets. I don't know the nature of those cases, and that's not disclosed on the website. But as far as civil asset forfeiture goes, I want to go away from that, and I want to go to strictly criminal asset forfeiture instead.
Okay. Tyler, question for you.
Yes,
Sorry, Mr. Brown.
No, Tyler's fine.
With your years in Northglenn, being that I was part of the HR department from previous, just hiring standards in general, when you separated your employment, was it in lieu of being terminated?
No, it was for personal reasons.
Okay.
So.
Rumor had it, and again, I say rumor, the last time that you ran, that you would be possibly replacing all of our command staff with friends of yours. Is that true?
No, it's not. That's a rumor. So I have a couple people that I would like to bring with me to fill a couple spots, but it's 4. It's 4 individuals. So the undersheriff right now, I have a friend of mine who's, I say friend loosely, he's an acquaintance through my professional experience. He has 34 years of experience at a large sheriff's office in the metro area. He's a Republican, and I think that that's very important to bring in both sides to have serious discussions and to come up with the best possible solution for everyone in the office and everyone in our community. So that's why I think it's very important to bring in a Republican undersheriff.
Can you tell me the other 3 positions?
Yeah, the other, I don't have selected positions right now. I'm gonna go through a process after the election to determine who's the best fit. And there's a lot of people in this sheriff's office that are the best fit for those jobs.
Can you tell me what's wrong with our current command staff?
I don't have any specific instances. So, you know, when you come in as a new sheriff, especially from the outside, there's a couple things vision-wise that I am looking at, but other than that, I don't think there's any true issues with the command staff right now. But I would bring in a Republican undersheriff. The other 3 people that I'm looking at, one of them has 18.5 years in law enforcement, was specific to investigations and undercover work. Another one has over 38 years in law enforcement. Some of them spent here at Arapahoe County early on in his career. And the other one has 35 years of law enforcement experience. So I'm bringing a lot of experience, and every one of those people, actually, just now that I think about it, is a Republican.
Okay.
And I'm bringing those people in that have that experience, that I can go to, that I trust, and that we can work together for the betterment. So.
Okay. And during this time together, you had mentioned that you had been acting chief.
Yes.
Have you ever been a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, chief?
No, just only in an acting capacity. I've been an acting supervisor on the street for patrol, so I had that experience on numerous occasions. I don't have any direct command experience, if that's what you're asking.
Correct. Yeah,
So-
and just for my clarification,
Right,
that's why I was asking
yeah.
why you think you could all of a sudden do the sheriff position.
Well, and I think that leadership is not that the person at the top does all the jobs, but they surround themselves with the people who are most qualified to do that job and to manage those positions. And so I think that that's very important, and that's why I'm going to bring in a handful of people that I've met through my professional career to assist with that. Just like Sheriff Walcher has right now, a command staff that assists him on a daily basis. So I think the job of doing all the things that a bureau chief does, or an undersheriff, captains and lieutenants, would be overwhelming for any individual person. So I think it's who you place in those positions.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown, I have a follow-up actually to one of those questions. You talk about the amount of experience that you would bring in, 34 years, 18 and a half years, 38 years, 35 years. And that's a lot of experience, but I would consider our sheriff's office fairly modern and progressive.
Yes.
And sometimes people who have been in law enforcement that long want to keep doing things the old way. And how do you think that level of experience, while it's great longevity, how do you think that will affect how progressive the sheriff's office currently is?
Well, I think that because of where the sheriff's office is right now in their progression of current law enforcement, I think that we will continue down that path. It's very important to me to be progressive and innovative on a daily basis of how we address things, and the use of technology and the use of community policing, and those will be important. And that's kind of where I step in as sheriff with experience of being in the car. Monday morning I'll wake up and at 6 a.m. I'll log in and I'll go to a patrol shift. And so I understand the current nature of community policing and policing in general. And so I think that it'll be a good offset between myself and the experience that I'm going to bring with me.
But you would not be directly supervising other people as sheriff, and how would you overcome this old dog new trick, for lack of better words? How would you, how would you overcome that and make sure that your command staff who's supervising progressive, modern deputies will keep going that direction?
Well, and that's where I'll be involved on a daily basis. And I'll make sure that I'm there and I'm listening to the deputies. I'm going to continue the open door policy. And by open door policy, I mean you can come in and sit at my desk at any time and ask me questions directly. And I'll address those questions without ever letting anybody know who you were or what the concern was, because I think that's important. I think that will allow me to send that message to my command staff that we need to continue down the progressive path that we're on, and we need to do things as we've been doing them and stay progressive. So.
Mr. Mulder and Mr. Brown, I'd like to stick with the experience theme just for a minute. Looking out in this room here, this is a small sampling of the lodge, and it's also a small sampling of the agency. But yet in this room, I'd be hard-pressed to find even one person who has less experience than either one of you. So for those people who might be insulted by the idea that either one of you think you can step in and lead this large of a law enforcement agency with such limited experience, what would your response be? How would you deal with those folks who feel insulted by that?
Can I go first, Tyler?
Sure can, sir.
I'll go ahead and go first because I have even less experience than Tyler Brown does, and I have less experience than everybody in this room. But the important thing to understand about the Sheriff's Department is that it is an elected position. I have met every single qualification that the Colorado Revised Statutes requires me to do to run for this office. And what does a Mulder Sheriff's Department look like? That means those who are doing the right thing by the community, those who are doing the right thing in the department, they will continue to have a job in my department. And when it comes time to promote new people, I'm going to rely on what my bureau chiefs have to say. I'm going to rely on what my captains and my lieutenants have to say through their evaluation reports of their own subordinates. And I have to trust that they have those intentions in mind, that we need to promote the best and we need to retain the best. The President of the United States is a civilian commander-in-chief of the United States military. The President doesn't have any military experience. The Commander-in-Chief of the Colorado National Guard is a civilian governor. He doesn't have any military experience. So in terms of having a civilian in charge of the Sheriff's Department, I want to bring that Commander-in-Chief mindset to the public so that way they have no doubt in their mind that this is citizen governance and it'll continue to be so, and that those who work for my department, they'll have nothing to fear from me being in charge because I'll promote those who need to be here.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Oh. Please don't take my running for sheriff as an insult at all, because because I want to lead this agency, I want to surround myself with the most professional law enforcement officers out there. And I think that that's right here in Arapahoe County. And as a law enforcement officer, on a daily basis, I'm learning something new. And if somebody has or can teach me something new, that's great. And I'm going to look to everybody in our organization for ideas and recommendations. And it's going to be a democratic organization, because, you know, I'll use this as an example. The city of Aurora had a cost-saving initiative. If you could come up with a plan that saved the city money, they would implement it. Well, they were buying thousands of dollars of scaffolding to clean the top of the rotunda at their municipal courthouse. A guy said, why don't we just buy a tank of helium and some balloons and some double-sided sticky tape, and we can dust the top of the rotunda that way. Save the city like $7,000–8,000 in the first year. And he was a line level employee. So being a line level employee right now in my current department, I know that there's something every day that I can go to the rank and file of the sheriff's office and learn something from. So it's not an insult or a slap in the face to anybody. And I don't want it to be perceived that way. I really don't. Because I do think that the men and women of this department are amazing and they do a great job. I just would like to be able to put a little bit of my twist on the vision of the sheriff's office.
So a follow-up question for you, Mr. Brown. You also, you know, some of the chatter that's been going on the last couple of weeks is on your Facebook page. You put a copy, some sort of a photo cropped copy of the sheriff's patch on there. So I would, based on those conversations, certainly there's a number of people in the agency that are insulted by the fact that you would utilize the sheriff's insignia on your Facebook page. So I'm curious to know what your response to that might be, and I'm also curious to know where you got the photo of the patch you used on your Facebook page.
I got it from Google. That's where I got the patch from.
Okay.
I think I've since taken that down. I think it still might be bookmarked as one of my previously used profile pictures. If it's insulting, I'll take it down. I just figured, since I'm a citizen of Arapahoe County, that that patch not only belongs to the deputies, but it belongs to the citizens of Arapahoe County. So if it was insulting in any way, it wasn't meant to be. So that patch is a new patch and it's recognized by a lot of people. So that's how I utilized that patch. So it was from a Google search. I cropped the image and I put it on there. So I mean, by show of hands, is anybody insulted that I have that on there? No. Perfect. I'll take it down. Okay, my apologies.
Mr. Mulder, question for you. I'm curious to know if you could list for us the accreditations that the Sheriff's Office maintains and what areas of the Sheriff's Office they pertain to, and then perhaps as a follow-up question, what benefits the Sheriff's Office and the citizens of the community have by us maintaining those?
From what I understand about the way accreditations work in law enforcement, this is very important in terms of applying for federal grants. I understand when it comes to federal grants, they look at that accreditation. It's the same way the federal government looks at accreditation of colleges for the GI Bill, which I currently go to school under. Because those accreditations, they matter to the people who are giving out the grant money, people who are handing out funds saying, well, if you would like funds from us, we'd be happy to help, but we want to make sure that you're maintaining a specific standard. It's just like maintaining certifications or any sort of training in the military. It's to make sure that the Sheriff's Department is adhering to standards that people expect it to. Do I know exactly what those standards are? No, I do not, but I know that the jail has multiple standards that it has to uphold, and there's multiple accreditation agencies that the jail has accredited.
Okay, Mr. Brown, do you want to respond to that?
The specifically five, the named, the CALIA, I'd have to look at all the acronyms, but I know that they do operate, you guys are accredited by 5 different accreditation groups, and that I think it's over the last 4 or 5 years that you've earned the Triple Crown of accreditations. And, you know, I think the accreditation, you know, like the sheriff said earlier, it does hold us accountable. I would just like to make sure that we're continually operating under all the stipulations of the accreditation on a monthly, daily basis. So.
And just for clarity, the Triple Crown, we've maintained that over several accreditation cycles, which are 3 years at a time, so it's been a significant period of time that we've maintained that.
Fantastic.
And do either one of you want to address what the benefits are to the agency or the community in maintaining those accreditation standards?
I think the benefit is, you know, as the sheriff also stated, that, you know, it holds us accountable not only to the public but to an outside entity that comes in and has a specific set of requirements for operation on a daily basis. And I'm not 100% sure, but does it provides relief in several different areas of insurance liability because the agency is operating at the recommended national standard for these different departments.
Am I taking anyone else's time? I apologize. No one else is waiting, so I'm going to keep going here. Mr. Brown and Mr. Mulder, could either one of you, and I don't care who goes first or who wants to take the question, but I'm curious to know what your knowledge of the RISE program that we maintain in our detention facility.
The RISE program, the way that I understand it, is a residential type treatment, and it's falls under the work release program, and these people are allowed to reintegrate into the community under the guidance of the RISE program and the sheriff's office. They are allowed to have a residence and a job and reacclimate themselves into a community setting.
The extent of my understanding of the RISE program was that it was a program that's used within the jail as an alternative to sentencing. I don't know much more than that because I can't recall it off the top of my head, but it's programs like that that I absolutely love seeing in the department and would like to see the sheriff promote a little bit more on his own campaign page, because the people I've spoken to on the campaign trail, they're noticing when people don't talk about these things.
Sheriff, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. Neither answer is correct. That's a restoration, a competency program that we contract with the state of Colorado and ultimately private provider who provides restoration services. They're not even our inmates. They're not sentenced to our jail. It's a cooperative agreement, a private partnership to restore inmates competently so they can stand trial. So neither answer is correct, but.
All right, I guess I'm up again. The opioid epidemic has been crossing the nation. It's obviously been all over the media, and our community is no exception to being hit with an increase in overdose-related deaths and related issues. We've implemented at the Sheriff's Office a number of different programs to address that, both in a detentions capacity and in a patrol capacity. And I'm curious to know, Mr. Mulder, if you're familiar with any of those programs, and if so, if you could explain that to us.
So I did read recently when Sheriff Walcher was interviewed about similar programs that the jail has implemented measures in addressing the opioid crisis. I know that you issue a drug to people going through overdose. I believe it's either Narcan or something that starts with a NAR type word. But I do understand that we are implementing types of programs like these, and I'm glad to see that, because there's results happening in West Virginia and Ohio and Virginia proper. They're finding that when you can prevent overdoses and when you can get people to treatment, that helps immensely in terms of the opioid crisis.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brown, we just implemented what we refer to as a MAP program. Can you describe to us what that is from your perspective?
I don't have any knowledge of the new program that was just recently implemented. I would love to read about it, but I know that there's a lot of programs addressing this because it is a serious epidemic. I mean, no matter who wins the sheriff's office, they're going to have to address that opioids kill, 68,000 people a year we lose, which is more than the totality of the entire Vietnam War to opioid deaths. So it is something that no matter who wins is going to have to address, and I would love to be able to read more on the new implementation of that program. So as being an outside member, I mean, all of you guys know that I'm not a member of the sheriff's office right now, that some of those new programs are a little bit more difficult to get information on. So, but I would love to read more about that and how it's being implemented in the jail. I'm sure that you guys are doing a fantastic job with it. So,
okay, thanks.
Can I make a comment on that, on the whole opioid issue? I don't know of one sheriff's office in the state of Colorado that has done more surrounding opioids, deaths and things like that. And this MAT program, maybe some of you don't even know, it's a medication-assisted treatment program that that we have in the jail to where people that come in that are on certain drugs, methadone, we can continue that treatment so they don't relapse into some other worse consequences while they're in the jail. And when they get out, hopefully they get attached to a provider that can continue the treatment related to opioid, heroin abuse, and things like that. Another example is that Narcan program. Patrol deputies carry Narcan. We've got a Narcan program within the jail. So when we identify inmates that are released from the jail that are high risk for heroin overdose, they're given a Narcan. And we've had saves regarding that. We've had saves in patrol. Drug take back, another big thing. Some people claim, and I think this is true, that the more drugs we can get out of medicine cabinets and things like that to stop people from using them inappropriately and probably illegally, is to try to get them out of medicine cabinets. So not only do we participate, everybody knows, in the National Drug Take Back Day, but years ago when it was difficult, we put a drug drop box in our lobby that people can come in. And even more recently, we've taken this effort out into some big HOAs. As an example, Heritage Eagle Bend had us come out for 2 hours, educate some of their citizens on the opioid issues and getting stuff out, and we took back 111 pounds of stuff in 2 hours from Heritage Eagle Bend, and we've done that with other groups. We're going to do that again up in Aurora at the county Center Point building for 3 consecutive days for 2 hours in September in an attempt to get this stuff out of people's medicine cabinets. So I'm going to take a little bit of credit for this. There's no sheriff's office in the state that is doing as much around this issue as the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Adam Burson. I've been with the Sheriff's Office 12 years. I'm currently a lieutenant assigned to court services. That way we know each other.
Okay.
And I apologize for coming in late. My garage door broke and smashed my car. So
Happens.
happens. So my question for you is a boots on the ground kind of question. I'll start with you, Mr. Mulder, since you're first. What I want to know is, and considering the current dynamic in our county, right? Violent crime is on the rise. It's on the rise throughout the metro area, right? Shootings are on the rise. Officer-involved shootings are on the rise. So what do you do as sheriff? What is your role at 2 in the morning when one of our guys shoots a 17-year-old on Mississippi?
My role as sheriff at 2 in the morning, it's very similar to what my role in the Army was at 2 in the morning. I wake up, my phone's right next to the bed, I get up and I go to where I need to go. I need to respond to what's going on and I need to react to what's happening. So if I get a call at 2 in the morning saying, Sheriff, this happened, it's like, all right, I am up, I'm on my way, I'll be right over. Because as sheriff, I need to answer those calls at 2 in the morning just like any good leader should. And I have to answer those calls on weekends, holidays, and even after hours, whatever those hours might be. So I will be available when there is a crisis and I will be available when I am needed.
Okay, so assuming you're available, what is your role then upon arriving? Because we're used to availability. I'm sure you're aware, right? We're used to people showing up. You show up, there's media, there's public, there's expectations that are out in society right now. What is your response to the general expectation in society after a law enforcement involved shooting of a juvenile?
As the elected sheriff, my responsibility is to handle the media, talk to the media, and take all of their questions so that way everyone in the department can do their job without having to worry about the media hound them. My job is to make sure that I'm answering the media questions, I'm accounting to the public, and I'm answering everyone's questions in that regard so everyone else in this department can do their job.
What do you feel about releases, let's say body-worn cameras? If you're not aware, Arapahoe County has body-worn cameras.
I am aware that Arapahoe County has body-worn cameras, and I understand that there's plans to put them onto more deputies in the future. And what we're actually finding is that, contrary to groups who are generally against policing, what we're finding is that body camera footage is actually demonstrating more often than not that officers are doing the right thing. They're doing the correct job, they're following their standards, they're following their procedures. So in terms of body cameras, they're a valuable tool in establishing, hey, we're doing the right thing. So I would like to see more body camera footage going on. Now in terms of releasing that to the public, that's a sensitive issue that has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. I know there was a case that happened just recently in the city of Aurora, just a couple of days ago, where a homeowner was shot and killed after the homeowner shot and killed an intruder. And the chief of police had coordinated with the family, and the family had asked that, at this time, please don't release the body camera footage. We want to continue our grieving and please respect our privacy. So I'll make sure that if body camera footage does get released through a Freedom of Information request, it's
handled respectfully. We make sure that personal details aren't available, making sure no social security numbers, personally identifiable information, things of that nature is released. And that's released, it's done with respect and integrity to everyone in the department and the people involved.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, you care to answer?
Please, you know, the availability portion, you know, you're in a position as sheriff, you're going to have to make yourself available in these situations. I would be available, just as I'm sure that if the sheriff, you know, he makes himself available at all hours of the night. My biggest concern once arriving on scene is making sure that all the resources needed by the team that's there are being met. Media questions, those can wait. Making sure that my personnel is taken care of and that the investigation, it has all the resources it needs at that time. Answering every question that the media has, not realistic at that point in time. Addressing the media, yes. As, you know, the leader of the office, I would address the media, but I would not answer every question asked by the media because I don't think that's beneficial in the heat of the moment. You know, there's going to be questions asked that really don't pertain to that specific incident. Other things are going to get drug in. That's not appropriate. You know, we'll state the initial facts of what was happening, and then we will come together as an agency, as an investigating unit, and make sure that all the facts are together before we release any statements. So make sure that our people are taken care of first, then the outside, and then come back and collect all the facts in that situation. Especially because tensions are going to be high at that point. You stated that it's a juvenile shooting. That's tough on anyone. So to be there and to be the head of the department to show a leadership role, yes, but my main focus is making sure that the resources are met for our group immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Sheriff, you care to answer?
I'd love to. You know, all that's true. I mean, obviously, we have to make sure the resource in place because we're going to have two separate investigations going: a criminal investigation, and then ultimately, in essence, a use of force investigation. But you know, more just as important. And I'm going to read a list of names, and if you want to know how I do business, talk to any of these names: Doremus, Carroll, Knudsen, Peterson, Stokes, Goodyear, Kahn, Gillespie, Schambaugh, Walker. Talk to any of them. And you'll find out kind of the way I operate on these issues. We've had a lot of issues lately. And please talk to Ed Doremus. And he'll tell you how I operate and what I think is doing the right thing. And when our guys act appropriately and when they perform at heroic levels, they need to know that. And that's what I try to do. So.
Thank you, Sheriff. One more question, then I'll get out of your way. So my next question revolves around ICE. Being a hot topic, we had a protest recently with ICE involving them. What is your stance politically on how the Sheriff's Office should interact with ICE as the federal entity?
I would say the most important thing with regard to operating with federal agencies, and this applies to every federal agency, not just ICE, is that when we do operate with them and within our own operations, we have to do things in a constitutional manner. ICE has repeatedly violated the Constitution by not getting judicial warrants for detainer requests. This is not me making this up. This is what the Colorado Supreme Court has ruled. Requests from ICE have to be a judicial warrant. That is what the requirements of the Fourth Amendment are. So I will fully cooperate with every federal agency so long as they maintain their adherence to the Constitution that we're all sworn to uphold.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Again, I would work with these agencies in accordance to the law. The ICE protest, my political thinking is, unfortunately, you can't block the entrance to a federal facility like that. Those people have to be removed. And when it comes to ICE detainers, if we're following all the protocol that we have in place that has been requested by ICE, then we're living up to our obligation to them. And sometimes that could be a strain on our department, or it could be something where we've lived up to our obligation, but ICE doesn't have the resources or the availability to, say, pick up someone that they asked us to notify them if we're in contact with. If we've held up that notification and we've notified them, then we've lived up to our obligation as an agency. So again, sometimes those put a lot of demands on a smaller entity like a sheriff's office that sometimes we just can't meet all of their needs on a daily basis.
Thank you,
But I would
sir.
work in conjunction with them, so.
Sheriff?
Just one comment. So, generally accurate, but not quite. Tyler said something to the effect of if we follow their protocols, we're meeting whatever requirements of the law and all that. Unfortunately, the issue of ICE detainers has been decided in a federal court. It started out in Clackamas County, Oregon, and what that court said in essence was that those are not a valid instrument to hold inmates. So even though ICE, their protocol still dictates that they give us a detainer and we receive those detainers, but we don't recognize those detainers as a valid instrument to hold an inmate. However, and we will cooperate with federal authorities, but what we do, so we don't follow their protocols. That's the bottom line, because they're not valid. We will get sued. But what we do is the fact when we do receive these detainers, we do let ICE know that a certain individual that they've inquired about via the giving of us of a detainer, we do let them know that that individual will be released on X date at, say, X time. We may say no earlier than 6 a.m. And if ICE wants them, they can come and get them. They would like us to follow their protocols when it comes to detainers, which is holding individuals solely on the basis of an ICE detainer, but we cannot do that. So we don't follow their protocols, although we do cooperate with ICE. So just a clarification of really into the weeds, but it's a very important into the weeds discussion.
Thank you, Sheriff.
So I want to ask a question that I think is more specific to us as a sheriff's office employees. Everybody this side of the table we've all taken the oath, the same oath. We've all sworn to uphold the Constitution, the state Constitution.
Do I need to move over there now? Because I've taken that oath.
I didn't say everybody on that side hadn't.
Oh.
Just that this side had.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I did that for 6 years.
And all of us, everybody sitting here, we're all sworn, and all of us said that we're going to protect the community, that we're going to defend the community, that we want to be a positive influence in our community. These are all the things that we say to become law enforcement because we believe. But we're looking at you guys, and every single one of you has mentioned our dedication to the community and what you would do for the community and how you would represent the community and protect the community and serve the community. I want to have a question more specific to what are you going to do to take care of us, your employees? And specifically, if you look at trendings in America right now, law enforcement officers die, it's true, and they die at the hands of sometimes the civilians and sometimes they die at their own hands. Suicide is a major issue in law enforcement. Depending on how you look at the numbers and what years you're looking at, sometimes suicide can be a more major issue to law enforcement than an active shooter situation or a gun, killed by gunfire in a criminal situation. And it's something that's touched our own agency. And Sheriff Walcher, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I also know anybody who's been to Command Update knows what's happened in the last few years, knows what steps have been taken and what we've done to increase our mental health for our enforcement officers, peer support, our employee assistance programs. So we've had changes that are positive, and I said I think we all know what those are. So my question would be for you two, what are you going to do to address those issues for the people sitting in this room, for the people that are struggling to do the job, to make sure that we don't become one of those statistics, to show us that you are a person, as our commander-in-chief, as you put it, is going to take care of us?
I'd like to go ahead and start, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was a chaplain assistant in the United States military. My job was to intervene in soldier suicide. I was trained in suicide intervention, and my job was to brief commanders on the very real dangers of suicide that our military members are facing. The statistic for the military is 22 a day. I understand that the statistic for correctional officers is 24 a day. So that statistic is exceeding the military standard, and the military standard has gotten the public panic, to which I state, we also need to make sure we're taking care of our correctional officers and our patrol deputies and everyone else who works in our department. And I understand that there's a major stigma in law enforcement regarding seeking help for suicidal ideation, post-traumatic stress disorder, or anything of that nature. I want people in my department to be able to get help without worrying that they're not going to have a job in the future. If anyone is dealing with that, I want you to be able to get help. And if there's not enough resources, if there's not enough people to talk to, if there's not appropriate resources that are going on, I need to know about that so I can push for that, because that's my job as sheriff, is to take care of every single one of you. I want the best in my department, and I want my best to know that I've dealt with people who've dealt with suicide and post-traumatic stress disorder and other related issues. So I may not have experience in law enforcement, but I know that a lot of the struggles that law enforcement deals with, I've dealt with in the military. So if you're struggling with anything like that, you've got my help.
The sheriff's office is the people who serve the community on a daily basis. And without the dedicated men and women of this agency, it doesn't succeed. It really doesn't. And so you guys, as deputies and civilian personnel, are on the front line, and you're the most important asset that we have in the sheriff's office. And your mental health and your physical well-being are of the utmost importance to me. You know, if this is to implement, you know, therapy sessions, if it's to implement, you know, working out, you know, physical activity, possibly while on duty, if this is to address, you know, any one of those issues, I'm open to that, because again, this is where the rubber meets the road. You guys are it. And if you guys are happy and you're taken care of and you're excited to show up to work every day, we're winning as an organization. And so training all of my managers, you know, in terms of sergeants, lieutenants, and peer counselors to recognize these issues and allow personnel to get the help that they need is very important. Because without, I mean, we talk about serving the community, you brought that up, we say we want to serve the community. That's why we all got into it. It's why we strap it on every day and we go to work. But we got to take care of each other. You know, one of the things I tell all the guys at the start of a shift or when we switch off, you know, at shift change, is take care of each other. That's first and foremost. So if it's a continuation of, you know, internal things that the sheriff has put in place, that's great. Or if it's new ideas, that's great too. Let's hear them, because your guys' well-being is the most important thing.
Would you care to comment? I said I know we've heard some stuff on this before, but
You
would
know,
you care to?
here's the bottom. We've made some changes. We've had some tragedies. We've made some changes. And there's people in this room that have suggested some of these changes that ultimately we've put in place. I'm not a chaplain's assistant, right? I go to church. I'm not a chaplain's assistant. I'm a cop. But I think any of our employees who have these ideas that can help our employees surrounding any issues they're going through, whether it's duty related or personal related, if it's maybe it's a bad divorce or whatever. I mean, anything we can do for our employees, we're going to do it. And if people have ideas out there, I'm all about doing it. And that's, quite honestly, that's some of the changes we've made, are just sitting around discussing what else can we do for our employees. So if people have ideas out there, let's do it. I mean, I'll do anything I can to take care of our employees.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So my question is very specific to what I currently do at the sheriff's office. I work for the narcotics team. And you spoke emphatically about essentially decriminalizing drugs and making it that these people need, what's the word I'm looking for? They need help, essentially. I agree with you, and working on the narcotics team, those are not the people we try to arrest. Those are the people that are committing crimes. Those users are the ones committing crimes, the burglaries, the robberies, theft from motor vehicles. All of those crimes revolve around drugs. The forgeries. We go after specifically the people that are above them that are selling those illegal narcotics. What is your stance on that, and how is that going to affect personally my job?
My stance on that in regard will most likely have very minimal impact on your own job as is, because you can't traffic drugs, you cannot be part of a cartel. That's just that simple. My opposition to the war on drugs doesn't come from what you guys are doing. It comes from the simple fact that prohibition has failed every time we've tried it in this country. It has failed with alcohol, and the war on drugs has been ongoing since the Nixon administration. This approach is not working. And what we're finding in Colorado is that because legislators and municipal governments are trying to tax marijuana so heavily, marijuana is going back into the black market that Amendment 64 was trying to get back out. So as an elected official, I would be using my position to tell my other elected officials, stop trying to make the black market viable by taxing the ever-loving crap out of these drugs, because when you make a black market viable by making a legal market impossible to happen, black markets are still going to continue, the criminal element's still going to be involved in drugs, and your job's not going to get any easier.
And in all reality, the marijuana has made my job 10 times more time intensive than it ever was when it was illegal. So is there anything in reference to the marijuana aspect of things that any of the three of you can answer? Just the fact of marijuana right now is so hugely discussed. It's legal, but it's not. How are we going to combat that and be able to get people either buying it legally or be able to change that so that we're not dealing with that on a daily basis? Because it is legal, but it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's created a massive problem. Just in my own city of Aurora, medical is not legal, but recreational is. That's creating a problem in Aurora as well. So my job as an elected sheriff, like I said earlier, is that I need to be going to these legislators saying, hey, all these gray areas that's going on, all this overlap and all this disconnect, it's not helping anyone. It's making your job more difficult. And what we're also finding is that the black market for marijuana in Colorado is predominantly coming from the surrounding states where marijuana is not even legal at all. A couple states tried to bring lawsuits against the state of Colorado for that. So not only do we need to start pushing decriminalization here, we need to be pushing that nationwide. And I know that's not a thing the sheriff can do by himself, and that's certainly not the scope of what the sheriff's office is, but the truth of the matter is, as long as there is that black market demand for marijuana, the black market's not going away.
Either of you guys want to add in on that?
You have a job with me?
I do.
Okay. You're going to keep that job? Yeah. You know, I'm not a marijuana fan. I hate it. I just think at the end of the day, it's illegal. At the federal level, this is still illegal, right? And I wish the federal government would do their job. They don't do anything well, but I wish they'd do their job and enforce federal law, and they don't. They chose not to. Just a statement. What bothers me about marijuana and any drugs, and I don't think you can make a wholesale statement that the war on drugs has failed, because what we don't know about all these, the majority of the federal prison population is related to drugs. It's not violent crimes. Those are charged generally at the local level, and those people are generally, not always, generally in state prisons. But one has to think, if we didn't have this war on drugs, how many other people are killed, hooked on stuff, how many children are dead, because we've allowed these are not dealers, these are not users that stand on a corner that are in federal prison. These guys are serious offenders, and who knows how many lives they've killed. Does anybody remember the name Almeda Sullivan? Several kids died because of her actions and stuff, so I don't think we have a failed world. But what bothers me about marijuana, and then I'll get out of this, but is it's so readily available. Now, what happens to these now kids who are doing the edibles, who are getting access to it in a much easier way? And what do we look like in this state or in this country? But what do we look like in this state or in country in 10 or 20 years? Because it does have an impact on a developing brain. And that's what bothers me about all of this, and specifically marijuana. But I don't think you can blanketly say we haven't failed at a war on drugs. Is it a tough war? Yes. Are there issues with it? Absolutely, I get that. But I'll tell you what, these people that are selling drugs, and these are ultimately winding up in the hands of our children, ultimately, or their parents who die. And they, by the way, most of them don't work and pay taxes. They're crooks anyway. So I don't think it's altogether failed. I understand what Eric is saying, but with me, you have a job, and we have a job to do, and you guys do it well. I bet you'd like more people. I'd love to give you more people, but it is what it is.
Everybody in here would like more people.
I know. Yeah, thank you for recognizing that.
And just to follow up on that, you'll have a job. The narcotics unit will have a job if I'm elected sheriff. I think it's an important job, and I think you hit on it perfectly. The line level user is the one that is out doing the burglaries, the first degree criminal trespasses, the street robberies. Yes, we're addressing those people, and we're using programs in the jail to possibly help them get off of drugs. But you're also using those contacts and those arrests to work your way up that ladder to eliminate criminal enterprises, which is amazing. And just to reiterate, the amount of lives that you've saved by taking drug dealers off the street, they're uncountable. It's just like being on patrol and you're at the right place at the right time. You'll never know it because the crime didn't happen. But those numbers they're countless. You can't utilize that statistic at all because it doesn't exist. We're there, you're doing the right thing. So the number of people that, you know, the war on drugs has saved is countless. And so you guys are doing a good job. And I think part of that, and I'll jump into the asset forfeiture, I think when you start to utilize asset forfeiture appropriately for drug dealers who are buying Porsches and expensive jewelry and motorcycles and all these other things that are part of their criminal enterprise, trying to clean their money up, it's important to take those things away from them because that's what hurts them most. We just recently in Mountain View took down a dealer that had a kilo of cocaine and $100,000 cash in small Mountain View. 550 residents, and he's got a kilo of coke and a $25,000 custom chopper sitting there. Us taking that from him had an impact. All that stuff that the DEA took has an impact. And so it's an important job. And a lot of the times it's thankless. You guys are up late at night, you guys are doing buy busts, you're missing out on a lot of things because unfortunately those criminals don't operate during banker's hours. So thank you for what you do. So we appreciate that.
It's a multi-part question. Sorry, Jason. I told you I wasn't going to try and do this, but it's more for Mr. Brown, Mr. Mulder, for Sheriff. You can certainly weigh in. What is your understanding of the City of Centennial's goal for traffic accident reduction currently with the advent of 5 new businesses? 2 of them are Aero Electronics alone. We have multiple businesses now built up on Easter, about the 11,000 block, multiple new hotels, so we have travel in to the City of Centennial on a scale basis. What is your understanding of City of Centennial's traffic reduction goal?
I don't have any specific knowledge of their traffic reduction goal right now. I know that the Sheriff's Office just signed this new contract, which is allowing for more deputies to work in the City of Centennial. That the traffic reduction, I would have to look more in depth.
And to be fair, Mr. Brown, it was a traffic accident reduction.
Traffic accident reduction. Okay.
Sorry.
And so I think the addition of 14 to 16 new deputies and the ability to maybe concentrate a little bit more on traffic safety issues is going to go a long way. I mean, it's been proven that if officers are out there writing appropriate traffic safety tickets, it does reduce traffic accidents tremendously. And people understand that there's, you know, enforcement out there, and they're more careful. So I think that's a big addition to the services that we provide to the City of Centennial.
In terms of Centennial's traffic reduction goals, I'm not aware of what their actual goals are, but I do know this, just from my own personal experience, and this is my experience as a citizen, is that you go on any street and you see either a patrol officer either on their bike or in their squad car. If people see that car or they see that person on that motorcycle, they're going to slow down. I see this happen all the time. People typically go 50 on Hampton just after they get off that exit on Parker. But if you see the Aurora police out there just either sitting on their bike with the radar gun, or if you see an Aurora patrol car, people are going to slow down to the posted speed limit, even just a little bit more. So just having that presence out there that people know the police are watching, that will be very effective anyways.
Just a comment. You know, we quarterly, we go over to the City of Centennial, and and share with them what we refer to as key performance measures. And one of those key performance measures is the number of traffic accidents within the city of Centennial. And our traffic folks and the sergeant, they get data about where all these accidents occur, the high accident areas, and basically they're deployed in high accident areas, complaint areas, and any other specialty type areas like school zones and things like that. So, and despite even some of the challenges as it relates to staffing and wanting to increase our staffing of Centennial, is the fact that generally the traffic accident data has ultimately remained fairly steady, which is great. That's pretty amazing. And in fact, what's really amazing is the fact that in the past several years, we look at Arvada, and we look at Arvada as a very similar city to Centennial. It's about the same size, the same population. They have more staffing than we do, but traditionally, Centennial has about 1/5 or even less of the number of fatalities that an Arvada does. So we think we're doing well, but could we do yet better? Yes. The other thing Centennial's considering is this traffic plan that involves what would be traffic cameras at every lighted intersection. This is being considered and thought out, not for enforcement, not red light. I don't like red light cameras, but the city's thinking about putting cameras on every lighted intersection. So ultimately, think about this: if you're a patrol deputy, you're going to a call for service, and you can look on your computer and see what the traffic is in front of you, and potentially somebody can control those traffic lights for you, and you could go an alternate route based upon all the cameras that you could see on your computer in a patrol car. Or think about this: when it comes to the apprehension of suspects, that we're not going to keep that data. We don't want to be big government, but think about the idea of having cameras that can show for a period of days before they're erased over. Vehicles go through there, license plate numbers that go through there. So if we're looking at suspects for a robbery, we could potentially pull up a camera and see every vehicle that's gone through that and actually track them through the city via their traffic system that they're considering. So there's a lot of things going on now, a lot of great work by the traffic guys, but some good technology that we're looking at and the city's looking at that they want to work with us on. They're laying fiber throughout the city. And part of that fiber is what be they say Centennial will be or is the best internet connected city in the country. And with this fiber infrastructure they're putting in, they ran it in front of the sheriff's office, and ultimately we could be able to tap into that so we could actually get the fastest speeds when it comes to the internet and all this technology that are available. And imagine all that information pumping into the sheriff's office and being able to push that out to patrol cars and what you could do sitting in a patrol car. So that's a much longer answer to the question, but I think you have to know there's a lot of things going on in that realm.
Right. Get to some of the email questions due to time here. This is for all three. Arapahoe County does not have a law enforcement or public safety tax on purchases that neighboring Douglas County has implemented and is utilized to purchase the equipment and upgrade buildings related to law enforcement. As an elected official, would you champion an effort to establish and implement such a tax?
Yes. I think that we've seen, what Douglas County's been able to do with that money, and you guys are going to be the direct benefit of that. Not to steal your thunder, but the crime lab that's being built for all the jurisdictions to use in the area of Aurora, Douglas County, and Arapahoe County, paid for by Douglas County, if I'm not, am I mistaken by saying that?
Public safety sales tax.
Yeah, and so it's a great utilization, and I think that because of the work that the deputies do for the citizens, it would be very easy to go to them and say, hey, look, this is what we're trying to do. It's a very small incremental tax, but it would be able to provide X, Y, and Z for our deputies. Right now we have the public safety mill levy that provides for about 60 to 70 positions. People in unincorporated Arapahoe County are paying that already, but I think that they would easily pay for a small incremental tax to be able to provide more resources. And I would champion that with the Board of County Commissioners and the citizens to make sure that we have, again, stating that this is a progressive agency, that we have the best facilities. and that you guys are working in the state-of-the-art facilities to be able to do your job. So I would champion that.
I'm a libertarian, so that means I am opposed to any form of tax increase whatsoever.
Okay. I'm in between here. You know, here's the deal. It's more complicated. I'm not about tax increases. It's great that Douglas County has a public safety sales tax, and it's great that we're building it's going to open a 27,000 square foot crime lab within 2 months. But I think you got to step back a little bit first, and you got to look at everything government does, and you got to look at everything Arapahoe County does. Because I will tell you, I'll be upfront, and some of you know this better than others. There are things that Arapahoe County does that, quite honestly, I don't think we should be doing. And I think the county needs to better prioritize what we do. Public safety, I've always said this, is the most important thing government does. But I think we have to, that could be an option, a public safety sales tax, but we have to truly look at, have the plan, know what we need, and then look at how the county spends its money now, because I think there could be some changes. I don't think changes result in enough to build a jail, as an example. So then I think we should look at alternatives. But there are other alternatives other than just a public safety sales tax. So I'm not fundamentally disagreeing with a safety tax. Maybe we need that, and I won't even say probably, but maybe we probably do. But I think there are alternatives that we need to look at, and we have to look at the function of government and what Arapahoe County does. County does some things that, in my opinion, we shouldn't be doing, and it costs money. And as a taxpayer, I'm not all about raising taxes. It may come to that where we have to find a method via maybe a sales tax or maybe some sort of a property tax. Don't know, but I think we have to be smart moving forward. We may have to raise taxes. We may have to create a public safety sales tax, but we have some big needs, and we just don't know how that's going to be paid for, but we've got to be very thoughtful. Because I'm not just about, hey, we need money, let's go to voters and see if they'll do it. I think we got to make sure we do everything we can to prioritize what this county does and say that we've done everything we can and here's our needs. So I don't think we just jump there quite yet. We may get there. We may get there, but it's very complicated.
And I'm trying to prioritize some of these questions that were asked multiple times and get these asked first. This one was asked quite a few times. Members of the current command staff were appointed to their positions by Sheriff Walcher or Sheriff Robinson, and several are members of FOP Lodge 31. And this is related to, Mr. Mulder, Mr. Brown. If elected to the office of sheriff, would you demote those members to their last promoted rank or terminate them if you do not retain them in their current positions?
That's a difficult question. I would go through an extensive interview process to make sure that we're selecting the most appropriate candidate for those positions. So I would allow as I stated, I was bringing in an undersheriff. I would allow the undersheriff to demote if he wished to do so, and that would be a very frank discussion that we would have. So it wouldn't be a blanket statement. It would be a determination of the needs of the sheriff's office and what position that person is best suited for.
I would be very interested personally in bringing in a new undersheriff, simply due to the fact that the undersheriff is the second in command of the sheriff's department and has to take over in the absence of the sheriff, should it occur. If the current undersheriff, I believe his last name is Perea, Louis Perea, if he would like to continue with the department, go back to his previous position, I would certainly welcome him to do so, and anyone else who would like to do that. In terms of replacing the entire bureau chiefs, I'm not entirely sure that's necessary because there is some form of continuity that does have to occur.
Okay, and a follow-up question to that, which was asked several times, who would your choices be by name?
I'll go ahead and start. My choice for undersheriff, her name is Sarah Daggers. She is a libertarian out in Louisiana. She has had several years' experience as a parish deputy out in Louisiana, a former DEA task force member, and a former member of the United States military. And her views are pretty much in line with my own, so I know she has the experience to do this job, and I know that she shares my vision for what I would like to see happen.
My undersheriff pick would be Mark Nycastle from Adams County. He ran for sheriff as a Republican. lost in the primary by a few hundred votes, and now is currently assigned to a task force here in the metro area. But that would be my choice for undersheriff.
This one is for Sheriff Walcher. What is your opinion on non-sworn staff civilians carrying concealed weapons within the Sheriff's Office headquarters? Several of the non-sworn civilian employees have expressed interest in being able to carry their concealed weapons, especially in light of the incidents at the Sheriff's Office headquarters. These employees are trusted enough to be working within the building, or else they would not be there, and they would be legally able to carry concealed outside of the building. Is there any reason why these employees should not be trusted to carry within inside the building?
You know, I'd have to give it some thought, but my gut reaction is they're employees. They have a valid concealed handgun permit. And there are times, especially if you're working on dispatch in the middle of the night, there's nobody else in that building. So I think my gut would be we need to seriously consider that, and I'm open to doing that. But I'm going to have to think about that just a little bit further, but that's my gut. Because I'll tell you, I certainly feel for dispatchers. Because in the middle of the night, there's nobody else in that building, and things do happen, as we all know. So I think you've just made the request for us to consider that, Jason, so we'll consider that. Okay?
Okay. This one is for Mr. Mulder. In your bio that was submitted, your top goal reads, improve community relations through implementation of transparency measures that streamline public access to records while protecting personally identifiable information. If you're familiar with the Sheriff's Office website, there are instructions on how to obtain records through our records section and a list of what information will be redacted. Please explain what changes you would like to implement to streamline the process and what kind of cost will be associated with this change.
Ultimately, when it comes to changing the costs of records requests and other Sheriff's Department services, I want to look at price reduction. To give you an example of where I'm coming from with this angle, part of running for sheriff is, of course, submitting a set of fingerprints, submitting to a background check to the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, which I've done. Prior to the Elections Division giving me further guidance, I originally went to the Aurora Police Department to get my fingerprints done because it was open an hour sooner and it was closer to my house. It ended up costing me about $11. The Elections Division later came out and clarified I had to get it through the Sheriff's Department, which I thought in the back of my head, okay, it's a law enforcement agency, but it's the one I'm working for, makes sense, I'll go. And at the Sheriff's Department, it cost me twice the price that it did at the Aurora Police Department. So in terms of making records accessible to the public, I want to look at why are these things costing more than they do in neighboring and related agencies.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes, sir.
You know, the price of what we can collect via revenue set by statute, generally speaking, and ultimately these costs or fees that we collect generally do not cover what our expenses are. So I have the opinion that, you know, if a citizen wants a certain procedure, fingerprints, or whatever is done, I want to do the best to my ability to recoup those costs. Because ultimately then, they're the ones using the service. It's kind of like a pay-as-you-go. So I think we need to charge what is appropriate and try to recover to the best of our ability people that are utilizing those services, not just try to reduce costs everywhere, because ultimately that goes into our ability to have revenue, which goes into our ability to have staff and raises and everything else. So I think we have to be cautious when we talk about any source of revenue that the Sheriff's Office has.
This one is for all three. Multiple local law enforcement agencies have implemented the use of suppressors, often referred to as cans, to patrol officers. Long-term or permanent hearing loss is often associated with gunfire. What are your thoughts since agencies that border Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office service area have implemented such tools?
When I was in the military, we dealt with a similar thing. Military service members are constantly dealing with hearing loss. It is to the point where the VA will no longer cover hearing loss, but veterans advocacy groups such as the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, they continue to tell veterans to fight for that. Because what we noticed in the military is that whether it's working with artillery or on deployment, if you're using suppressors and hindering your ability to hear, That's more dangerous than being able to hear and dealing with the hearing loss. So in terms of mandating suppressors, I'd have to take a look at that, because in the military, suppressing our hearing left us in a very vulnerable position when we were doing something very dangerous. And in terms of dealing with hearing loss, I believe that needs to be part of long-term care for our deputies as they retire. And if that means I have to take a look at the retirement package, make sure if certain things are being covered, I need to address that.
Yeah, and I think the implementation of them for an officer safety issue, I think they could be utilized, and they could be utilized appropriately. It'd be interesting to read some of those new policies from surrounding agencies, but I think that we hit on it right there. I mean, we just had an incident. This fly is really bugging me. I'm sorry. We just had an incident. I think it was in Las Vegas, where an officer was in a pursuit and opened fire in his vehicle at the fleeing vehicle as they were shooting at him. Any of you, have ever sat in a gun, sat in a car and shot a gun at the range with open windows, or had to do that on patrol? You understand the pressures that are on your ear. I mean, you can rupture an eardrum, in that instance. So if there's something that we can utilize that's a technology that makes things safer, I think that that's definitely something that we should look at.
Jason, are the firearms instructors putting together some kind of package as far as a proposal and seeing what other agencies are doing and costs, and
yes,
are they putting together a package?
That's currently being worked on.
Good, great.
Okay. Due to time, this will be the last question. If it's okay with you three, there are multiple questions that we do not have time to ask. If I get back to the members, if I didn't ask these questions, can I provide them with your email addresses?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, or the list of questions fully, and
yeah, we can do that too.
Do a response.
Make it like a survey.
Okay, and the last question, this goes out to Mr. Mulder and Mr. Brown. What experience do you have not only being responsible for roughly 800 employees, but also being fiscally responsible for an approximately $8 million budget? Please explain.
So I've worked in budgets, not only within the military as a chaplain.
Sorry, 80.
Yeah, 91 million if I saw the last report from the county correctly. Anyways, when I was in the military, I was responsible for the operating budget of my unit section. That meant I was responsible for procurement, I was responsible for soliciting funds, and I was responsible for dispersing those funds correctly and documenting those things accordingly. A budget may escalate, but ultimately a budget is a budget. You get money in and you got to spend it on various things. Whether that's $11,000, whether that's $800 or $91 million. A budget is a budget, and there is a budget advisor in the sheriff's department. So even when I am making a decision, I am not making that decision alone. And in terms of commanding an organization of 800 individuals, I've regularly given briefings in the United States Army to crowds of over 200 in rooms slightly bigger than this one without the assistance of microphones or things of that nature. And from those trainings, I was able to give not only why we need to train this way, but I was able to cite doctrine, I was able to cite regulations, and I was able to state, this is not me making this up. This is what the rules are, this is what the regulations are, and this is why we need to do this. Because when we train to a specific standard, that becomes muscle memory, and that means we will revert back to that training in times of crisis. So if we get muscle memory correct, and if we get that training correct, we can train to the right standard. So I understand how training works, and I understand how budgets work.
Mr. Brown?
In terms of the $80+ million budget, that's going to be a collaboration of all the departments here at the Sheriff's Office. And one of the people that I'm going to request, that come in and work with me at the Sheriff's Office, who has over 38 years of experience, and even more so experience in accounting. I'm going to bring him in to work with me and the budget. So right now, I've never seen $80 million. It'd be pretty cool if I had seen $80 million, but I understand how important it is for the Sheriff's Office. I mean, it buys everything down to pens and pencils. So all those things need to be evaluated and gone through at budget time. And I think right now you guys are getting ready to go through another budget proposal and recognizing the priorities of the Sheriff's Office. And I think that's the biggest thing that I will do with the budget is have all the priorities brought to me And that way we can determine, as a command staff, what needs to be implemented.
Okay.
Command of 800 deputies, you know, yes, there might be a time that I have all 800 deputies in front of me, but I think command of those deputies is getting to know these individuals, getting out and making sure that they understand that their best interest is my best interest. And so I think the only way to prove that is, if I'm elected, to show you guys how I can work through those situations. So.
All right. Thank you. Now we'll go ahead and do closings. So, Mr. Mulder, if you want to proceed on that.
Sir?
First thing I'd like to state is, I'd like to thank you all for having me here today. I understand I have a few views and a couple of opinions that many of you won't agree with, and that's perfectly fine. Because as sheriff, I want to let you know, if you're doing the right thing and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, which it sounds like you are, you will have a place in my department. And when it comes time for promotions, I promote based on merit, because that is precisely what the military has taught me. And the Army's taught me about a lot of the experiences that many of you have gone through, sometimes on a daily basis. And they've taught me a lot about the struggles that many of you have to deal with. We've talked about suicidal ideation and post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are issues that I believe I have the experience in addressing and dealing with. And as sheriff, I want you to know, your career's not over if you need to go talk to somebody. If you're talking to somebody and getting help, you will have a place in my department. You'll have a job tomorrow. Now, what can a civilian sheriff bring to the sheriff's department who doesn't have any military experience, or sheriff's experience, excuse me, is that there's a lot of people in the public right now, whether they have correct information or not, they're a little hesitant to trust the police right now. That's not any of your guys' fault. Not really. It's not. Oftentimes, it's from a misunderstanding of how the occupation works, and it's from a misunderstanding of how things happen. With a citizen sheriff in place of a typically career sheriff, people are going to be more willing to accept the fact that, hey, we have a voice over what's going on in the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department is going to account to me. And if I do my job wrong within the 4 years I have as sheriff, I fully expect somebody from even within my own department to step up, call me out on what I'm doing wrong, and say, I can do it better. So if I'm doing the job wrong, by all means, vote me out. And if you want to know more about what I have to say, it's on my website, mulderforsheriff.com. If you want to talk to me, I'm available as well. I thank you all for giving me your consideration, and I hope we were able to change the conversation and bring up the issues that matter today. And I look forward to seeing all of you in the future, whether I'm sheriff or not.
Thank you, Mr. Mulder. Mr. Brown?
First, I'd like to thank all of you guys for being here, taking time out of your guys' busy schedule. I know some of you are missing sleep, so I appreciate that. I'm going to keep my closing very short. I'd also like to thank Jason and the FOP for giving us this opportunity. This is a very interesting format for all of us to be up here and speak on the issues. You know, besides a short time in college, I've lived in Arapahoe County most of my life, and I'm dedicated to the continuation of the greatness of Arapahoe County. And I think running for sheriff, you guys are the dedicated men and women out there that are doing it on a daily basis. And I'm excited for the opportunity to possibly work for you, to help you get the tools and the resources that you need on a daily basis to continue the mission at hand, because it's a very critical mission. You guys do a thankless job on a daily basis, and just as a citizen of Arapahoe County, not as a police officer, but just as a citizen of Arapahoe County and Centennial, thank you guys for what you do. And as a police officer, I understand the sacrifices that we make on a daily basis. So I will make sure that we are addressing the issues that the membership of our agency needs. And we will continue to work together to make this the progressive law enforcement agency that you guys have said it is and continue to want it to be. So that's very important to me. So, Tyler Brown, I thank you again for your time. I'm committed to you guys and to the sheriff's office. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Sheriff Walcher?
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I know you're taking time out of your schedule, and thanks for these guys to show up also. You know, I was thinking about last night, thinking about this and kind of looking back at a career and looking back why I was brought into Arapahoe County by the former sheriff, and then ultimately what I've done since I've been here. And, you know, it's easy to talk and say, do this, let's do this, and we're going to move forward. But I was kind of reflective about what we, and I'll say we, have done since I've been in Arapahoe County. And rather than say, I mean, we've got some big plans, some things that you guys don't know about. There's some other plans in the works. But I want you to think for a moment, just reflect back about 7 or 8 years ago when I came here, and then I've been in my 5th year as sheriff. Most of these things are things that I've done, or we have done since I've been the sheriff. So think about things like in detentions. That RISE program, that's been a big deal. Jail-based behavioral services. The MAP program. Setting non-certified deputy sheriffs to a post academy, raising up that number so more people have those opportunities. We've increased staffing in the jail. We went to a different shift plan, a 12-hour shift plan, so you have some choices over in the jail. We have that, and I think this was right before I was sheriff, or maybe not, but we have that central screening point building that serves the courts. You know, if you think about the Public Safety Bureau, we've more than doubled the number of SROs in our schools. We've doubled the number of teachers. We've got internet crimes against children investigators. That regional crime lab is so important. 27,000 square feet. Aurora, Douglas County, and Arapahoe County is going to open in a month and a half. Precinct 5 substation. Bought that, huge remodel project, but that's going to be live in the early part of next year. Maybe not a big deal, but actually I kind of like the new graphics on the patrol cars. I like these new uniforms, quite honestly. We added a community resources deputy with plans to add another one in 2019. We inked a new contract with the city of Centennial. I told you about the 21 positions we're going to try to attempt to get, and I got a very good reception, by the way, from Centennial. Support services. We've implemented, started working on the road to having a fitness program. Another training deputy, have 3 skills areas that are SMEs in the training unit. Established, went back to, now we have that joint academy with Douglas County. Sheriff's Office wide, just so you know, you guys are paid in the 75th percentile, or in the top 25% or 5 out of 20 of the agencies that we compare with. And the Board of County Commissioners have come on board with me and said, yeah, we're going to do that with our deputy sheriffs. We're going to pay them that. We've added about 50 positions, over 50 positions at the Sheriff's Office. I talked about uniforms. We've upgraded equipment. We have a public information officer that actually, we've upped our social media presence, and actually we're more responsive to our citizens and the press. Next week, I'll be going in front of the Board of County Commissioners to propose an increase in the vacation time you get and what you can carry over and how fast you get it. That's another discussion. Some of you have facial hair right now. We talked about all this stuff we do with the opioid epidemic. So I guess what I'm here to say, you know what you're getting. Last time you supported me, and I appreciate that. Yesterday, I garnered the support of the Aurora Police Association, the unanimous vote of their board, to support me and endorse me for the office of sheriff. And they appreciate us. They appreciate us very much at this organization. So I guess you know what you're getting. And if we want to keep moving forward, and if we want to keep doing some big things, I'm the guy. I'm the guy. But I'm just telling you, quite honestly, if it's somebody else, things are going to slow down or maybe stagnant, and that's kind of spooky. We need to keep moving forward. And to be quite honestly, with everybody, this job, not only do I think you need the expertise and the experience that I have, and most of you may know my resume, but you need somebody with the built-in relationships that can make phone calls and make things happen. And that's what I can do. And I don't care what it is, I can make things happen. And this is me 10 minutes last night just jotting a few things down. I think we've had some great accomplishments, and everybody in this room have helped or been beneficiaries of those. So if you like what we have and you like some of the things that have been happening, then support me. If you don't support me. But I'm here to serve. And this is my last gig. I have no other plans beyond being a sheriff. I love what I do, but I'd appreciate your support very much. So thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff Walcher. On behalf of the Lodge 31 Board of Directors and the members, we appreciate all 3 of you for being here today, taking time out of your day to spend with us. So thank you.